So I will request Mr. C. A. Deepak, please come and join with us. So CA Onimis Mukherjee, please take the chair and proceed further. Oh, I will also request the incoming Banerjee, please come and join with us. CA Devan Paktu, probably is not completing his lunch. So, Onimis, please.
Good afternoon, friends. Today we have assembled to commemorate the coming of age of our very own accountants library. This is the second technical session of this Platinum Jubilee celebrations, and we are privileged to be part of this rich heritage of this library, which started its journey in the year 1947 and has since then relentlessly led our members towards the halo of illumination that knowledge brings with us. The library has remained a haven for enrichment of the journey towards being empowered through knowledge. It has successfully equipped its members to quench their thirst for knowledge so that they are always in lockstep with the changing dynamics of our profession. Today, in this second technical session, we have among us CA Deepak Chatterjee, gracing this august occasion, and CA Deepak Chatterjee, with all his exceptional skill and brilliance, shall deliberate on new opportunities for CA profession. CA Deepak Chatterjee is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He was a Central Council member and was a chairman of the Auditing Practices Committee of ICAI. He is presently practicing as a senior partner of Mrs. L.B. Jha and Company Chartered Accountants. He is on the board of a large number of companies. CA Chatterjee was appointed by RBI as a member of the Padmanabhan Committee set up to review RBI's supervision over banks. He was also appointed as an expert witness by the Commercial Court of London in litigation pertaining to the Indian securities scam in 1992. CA Chatterjee led an Indian business delegation to Spain and Portugal and has spoken at numerous conferences and seminars organized by ICAI and various other academic institutions and professional organizations. He has also addressed seminars and conferences internationally, globally, in London, New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, Beijing, Abu Dhabi, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, and so on, and a number of other foreign locations. Sir, your deliberation will certainly, in the next few hours, in fact, we'll hear you, and certainly it will, with the test of time, and remain the elixir of knowledge for us now and forever. In the second technical session, apart from CA Deepak Chatterjee, we have another speaker and our Central Council member, CA Vishal Doshi, who will be deliberating on CARO 2020 and amended Schedule 3. So, in the second technical session, first session is of CA Deepak Chatterjee. Sir, I would request CA Onin Chatterjee Is he in the auditorium? So I would request then CA Radhakanto Chatterjee to come on the dais to offer flower bouquet to CA Dipanka Chatterjee. And I will also request CA Srikumar Chatterjee to come on the dais to offer the memento to CA Chatterjee. So I would request you, sir, so let us enrich ourselves with music.
My friends on the dais, my friends in the audience, first let me reassure you. My good friend Sri Upadhyay, in his introductory comments, says that he will now listen to the speech of Mrs. Chatterjee for hours. I will not speak for hours. Don't be so scared. I'll speak for minutes. My second observation is this, that I'm an old man, but I'm brave enough to take on the most difficult task, that is to speak after lunch. But I have hopes, because the motto of the institute says, do not sleep. So I hope you will observe the motto of the institute and not go to sleep. I'd like to start by congratulating the Accountants Library on 75 years of good work. And I do pray to Almighty that many of you in the audience will be fortunate enough to attend the centenary session of the Accountants Library, maybe in this very hall 25 years from today. I do sincerely hope for that. Friends, I have been asked to speak on new opportunities for the CA profession. Whenever I come to such occasions and listen to the leaders of our profession, speaking on the profession, I can see the leader of the profession sitting there, Sri Ranjit Agarwal. My good wishes to you. When I hear them speaking about the profession, about the giant strides being made by the profession, about the fantastic development being made in the profession, about the wonderful opportunities in the profession, my heart fills with joy. I'm delighted. I'm delighted that the profession is doing so well. I'm delighted that young people can come into the profession and grab opportunities from the air. Unfortunately, when I go home and look at the figures, all that joy vanishes. When I look at the hard statistics, I see basically two things. One, that the profession is not growing as fast as the economy is growing. If I take it that the economy is growing and I'm talking of figures between 2005 and 2021, the last 16 years, if I take it, the economy has grown at an average of 7-8%. Some years good, some years bad. The profession has not grown at that rate, and I'm talking of the total number of chartered accountants, has not grown at that rate. The rate of growth is only 6.27% in the growth in the number of chartered accountants. So it's not that young people are rushing to become chartered accountants. They are not. The second statistics I have is even more depressing. Among those who are becoming chartered accountants, the majority does not wish to come into practice. The number of members in whole-time practice used to be 54.12% in 2005, and now it is 44.02%, drop of 10%. Profession not growing, the number of chartered accountants not growing, and B, number of those who are in practice not growing. They are now in minority. So therefore, it is all very good. If you want, I will also give a very inspiring speech about wonderful strides being made by the profession of chartered accountants, but I prefer not to do that. We should understand what is going on. We should understand where we are, and especially for the young people here, where we are going. And if I look at the number of practicing chartered accountants in Eastern India, the number is pathetic. Let us not forget that Eastern India has the 7 northeastern states. It has Odisha, it has Bengal. And the number of practicing chartered accountants in 2021 is only whole-time practicing chartered accountants in 2021 was only 11,833. So there is stagnation in the profession. There is not enough growth. Now, unless we accept this, there is no point in listening to inspiring lectures. I would also like to make a second statement. Is it that our young people are averse to self-employment? The answer is no. India has become a land of startups. India has become a country in which young people are becoming entrepreneurs. They are becoming employers. But those who want to become entrepreneurs, those who want to be self-employed, those who want to become employers are not becoming chartered accountants. I think we need to understand this. I would like to make a second point. Is it that people are becoming chartered accountants and preferring employment because salaries are very high? Answer is no. A young chartered accountant who is freshly qualified will get a maximum of 8-9 lakhs. Correct me if I am wrong. Whereas a B school graduate from a mediocre B school will get 10 lakhs. I am not talking of IIMs. Somewhere we are losing. Yet, I I am standing here in front of you to talk about opportunities. Let me give you some more bad news. Let me tell you about the clouds, dark, ominous clouds on the horizon. The government has proposed that it will set up Institute of Accountants across the country. These Institute of Accountants will be like IITs and IIMs. They are a 5-year course. They will take in students at the end of class 12. And in 5 years they will become qualified accountants. What will distinguish them from us? In our profession, when a young boy or girl enters, he or she is not sure that he will pass. These institutions, like IITs or IIMs, will have almost 100% pass rate. So once you enter, you are bound to become a qualified accountant. Whereas in my profession, there is uncertainty at the entry level. The point is very simple. I do not know whether these qualified accountants from the Institute of Accountants will be permitted to do the attest function. I have no idea. I cannot comment. I should not say. But one thing I am sure of, that once these institutes are set up, it will affect the availability of article students for us. And our profession is built on a structure where we take the availability of article students as a certainty, as a given assumption. That will not work. There is also the matter of a CA bill which has been passed. It has received the assent of the President. I am scared to talk about it. Leader of the institute is sitting here. He will explain to you what is wrong with that CA bill. I will not open my mouth on the CA bill. Now the point is this. We see dark clouds on the regulatory front. We also see that across the world, there have been very, very large audit failures. These audit failures were mostly not known in India. In India, we had a Tricia case which was very good. After that, we have not had major audit failures. But in the West, yes, one after another, there have been very large audit failures. Now that contagion, that pandemic has come to India. We are having audit failures one after the other. And I'll not name them. I will not tell you, you know who they are. And if you look at what is happening in the insolvency area, that a bank has lent 1,000 crores on the basis of a balance sheet of 1,000 crores. When the assets are sold, the average realization is 20%, which is 200 crores. So what happened to impairment? I don't know. I don't understand accountancy. So 1,000 crores becomes 200 crores. And this is the average realization. So let's not talk about audit failures. We are seeing audit failures in India. From this, one thing is very clear. Since 1949, our profession was self-regulated. Those days are over. Our profession will no longer be self-regulated. This will mean a major change in the profile of the profession. There are certain other changes which I must also talk about. Let me talk about the adverse scenarios. Let me talk about the threats and then I'll go to the opportunities. Firstly, a large segment of this profession has survived on public sector work. Public sector audits, bank audits. We must understand the public sector is shrinking. And it is shrinking for good, forever. We must understand that the number of nationalized banks is going down. That work is reducing. We must also understand that because of the uncertainties in the economy, many of our smaller clients are not doing well. And they will continue not to do well. So many of our smaller clients will suffer. And the third issue, I should not say, because leader of some political party is sitting there, Eastern India is doing especially badly. The opportunities in Eastern India are shrinking day by day. So therefore, there are major threats when I interact with a group of chartered accountants in Calcutta. I cannot but mention that these are major threats facing, which all of us are facing. Now, my speech is not over. Once we understand the threats, once we analyze them, we should be able to look at the opportunities. And I am here to talk about opportunities. I am in the profession. I have been practicing, though the institute has not recognized this, I have been practicing for more than 50 years. The point is this, I am in the profession because I believe in the profession. I believe that there are opportunities, but we must learn to recognize them. We must learn how to seize them. Now, once we start thinking of what to do, opportunities, you must ask yourself, all of you must ask yourself one fundamental question. Why am I in the profession? What am I selling? In my view, I could sell three things. First, I could sell signature. You might think that I am being very nasty to you. I am not being nasty. When we accept a job at a fee at which we can never do it, no justice to that job can be done at that fee. We are not carrying out the job, we are only signing the report. That's called selling a signature. When we accept a job for which we are not qualified or not knowledgeable enough, we are not selling service, we are selling signature. My speech today is not for this segment of the profession. I have no ideas or no suggestions to give to them. A second thing you may sell is selling of cheap labor. What is selling of cheap labor? When you do a job which your client could have done himself, but he is giving it out to you because it's cost effective. You are carrying out the job at a price which is cheaper than what the client would have incurred. I have nothing against selling cheap labor. Very big firms do it, smaller ones can do it. But there are two caveats. One, if you want to do it on a big scale, which many of the larger firms do, then you need a lot of capital. You need a lot of money. You need a lot of resources, which many of us don't have. And if you are doing it at a smaller scale, filing returns, finalizing accounts, for low fees. You are doing work for which there is a lot of competition. You are doing work for which every day there will be newer requirements for the space. Selling cheap labor is okay, but my speech today is not for them. My speech today is for the third segment of the profession. And what is this third segment? The third segment is those who will sell knowledge. I think the profession has a lot of space for those who want to sell knowledge, because knowledge is in short supply, knowledge has high demand, and knowledge commands a price. Which we want. So let us talk about selling of knowledge. Now, firstly, I must clarify, knowledge is not, repeat, knowledge is not what you studied when you are an article student and you are studying CA. That is not knowledge. That is mostly outdated knowledge. The study of the acquisition of knowledge for our profession is a lifelong learning experience. I will pause for a minute. The next speaker is already here. Would you like to come up with the dais? Okay. So, the knowledge that you can sell as a chartered accountant is knowledge you acquire as you go along. The chartered accountancy course does not equip you with enough knowledge to sell. How do you acquire this knowledge? You acquire the knowledge from a host of sources. You acquire this knowledge from your clients. You see their best practices. You acquire this knowledge from what is happening in the environment. You look at best practices nationally, internationally. And out of this lifelong experience of learning, you acquire knowledge to sell. This is where I feel very depressed, very pessimistic about the future of chartered accountants. Our chartered accountants sit in closed rooms. They have walls around them. They do not look at the world. If I ask a GST consultant, he will tell you everything about GST. He knows everything. But if I ask him that, भैया मैंने सुना है कि अगर मैं सप्लायर का बिल पे नहीं कर पाता और बहुत दिन से सप्लायर का बिल पेंडिंग हो गया तो मेरा जीएसटी प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है। इसका सॉल्यूशन क्या है? He doesn't know how working capital management can be improved. Again, let me take the example of GST. Some input tax credits for which you will never get benefit will not get sorted out unless you change your supply chain arrangements. You will have to create new sources of supply, you will have to have new warehousing arrangements to be able to solve some of the problems that arise in GST. Now, if I ask a chartered accountant, he doesn't understand supply chain. He feels no need. Today our president was talking about the pride of our profession, continuing professional education. When I look at the subjects of the continuing professional education, I see most narrow technical subjects. And I feel we are not doing justice to the needs of knowledge of the profession. Today, across the world, In the top universities of the world, knowledge is interdisciplinary. Unless you understand the world, you do not have knowledge. Unless you understand other disciplines, you do not have knowledge. So therefore, this acquisition of knowledge, if you want to be in the area of selling knowledge, the acquisition of knowledge cannot be done in silos, in very narrow, constructed, closed door environment. It has to be a little more 360 degrees. Now, there is another problem with knowledge. If you are in the area of offering knowledge, knowledge gets obsolete very fast. So unless you are willing to unlearn, unless you are willing to relearn, knowledge selling is not possible. And you must understand when your knowledge is becoming obsolete. This you should not wake up to this harsh reality that your knowledge you have left behind. That should not happen. Now, if you ask me to talk about the specifics of knowledge-based services, I will then request you to also make a fundamental decision. And what is that fundamental decision? In which market will you sell the knowledge? A consumer marketing man first analyzes the market segments. Sri Leather won't sell shoes to the very fashion conscious. Sri Leather will sell shoes for the mass market. That's market segmentation. Similarly, you have to understand the segment in which you will offer your services. Broadly, I can see 3 segments. First, you have the large corporate. 2, you can have the small and medium-sized enterprises. 3, you could have the very smaller enterprises. These 3 segments of the market have totally different characteristics. And as a chartered accountant, if you decide to offer your services, you must know to which segment you will offer such services. If you take the topmost tier, the large corporates, you must understand 2 things. A, in our profession, there are a handful of firms who are very well entrenched in this market segment of the top corporates. It is very difficult to enter. Very difficult to enter. And to enter, you need resources. But one thing you must also remember, that the number of large players in our profession is very small, very small. So there is room at the top. And the entry barriers are such that if you can enter, others will not be able to follow you. So that's the characteristic of the top segment of the market. The second segment of the market is the small and medium-sized enterprises. Here is more of a personal relationship. It's more of trust you have from the owners. It's more of a continuing relationship. If you can build that up, if you are acceptable as a service provider, you will flourish. The third segment, the small companies, is today very large. The number of players in the segment, I mean the people who demand services is very large. They are also fragile because many of them perish because of the difficulties of the economy. But new entrants are coming in every day. India is a fast-growing economy. New entrants are coming in. So demand is perpetual. And from this last segment, you can generate a variety of demand. They want to know everything. They want to know accountancy, they want to know finance, they want to understand the regulatory environment, they want to understand taxation, they want to understand pricing policies, if any, in their sector, and it is possible to offer a range of services to this third segment. So therefore, segmentation according to your capabilities is important. The second way to segment the market is where would you like to render your services. Again, three segments: international clientele, urban centers, and small growing towns. International clientele may put you off. अरे ये कैसे होगा? International clientele कहाँ से आएगा? Let me tell you, all the international players are not multinationals. There are many who have growing interest in India. They want to understand the country, the economy, the regulatory environment, the tax laws. If you can establish contact, possible. Urban centers, strong competition, many players. My favorite are the growing small towns. You must remember that post-2017 introduction of GST, the large informal sector in the economy is shrinking, and they are transitioning to the formal sector. They are coming within the disciplines of an organized economy. They need services. The fastest growth rate in India by every parameter are in the smaller towns. So those who are entering the profession, I would very much recommend that they make a survey of the smaller towns and see where the opportunities are. To wind up on market segmentation, I have another thought. This is something Indians have not done, but in the West it is very common. Many service providers become industry experts. Today, where are the experts in the education field? Where are the experts who understand healthcare? Where are the experts who understand the real estate business and the demands of RERA? Where are the experts who understand fintech? Where are the experts who understand microfinance? People are not specialized. But these segments are growing, they are thriving. So if a chartered accountant decides that I see farmers coming into the organized sector and I will render services into the farming sector alone, he will prosper. He will know everything that is there to know about that segment of the economy, that activity. In the West, it is very common. There is a firm in USA, which is now part of Ernst & Young, which had 50% of the market share for services to the hospitality industry. Now, the point is this. Today, it is possible to specialize in a market segment, in an activity segment, and the area of knowledges they want to buy is amazing. I have some experience of the education sector. They want to know international best practices. They want to know about compensation patterns. They want to know about how to cope with the uncertainties of the Government of India regulatory practices on the higher education sector. You can sell any amount of services. Now, once the chartered accountant has made up his mind on the market segment, then he must decide what knowledge he wants to sell. He has a choice. Either he can offer a wide range of services, or he can become a specialist. To offer a range of services, you cannot do it alone. You need a team. You need to invest in people. You need to invest in infrastructure. You need to invest in tangible assets. You have to make multidisciplinary partnership. कुछ होगा नहीं अभी, ये सब बातें हैं. You have to create a multidisciplinary firm. And if we look around us, we see there are plenty of multidisciplinary firms already functioning in India. So if you create a multidisciplinary firm, you can render a range of services, will need a lot of capital. But if you become a specialist, and I see young people who have become specialists who are doing very well. Market segments will differ, but there is a lot of, every young man I speak to wants to become a GST specialist or a valuation specialist. Warning, दोनों में fees कम हो जाएगा. GST, more or less, the glitches are getting sorted out. And GST will become more mechanical, like Sarvel asked. The valuation will get a lot of competition from other professions also. But I can see so many areas where specialization is possible. Specialization with some understanding of the broad spectrum of services. Risk management. The new expert committee on amendments of the company law has said risk management has to be strengthened in large number of companies. How many specialists are there in risk management? Do you understand? Not many. ESG. ESG is not just for the biggest companies. S and G are for almost everybody. E may be for the biggest companies. Space for offering services. Specialist IT applications. Every IT application will not come from an IT giant. I have got some young boys and I am preparing audit software for our own use. I am not buying any of the ready-made audit software. I have seen it, I have not liked it. Now, young boys are doing it. You are all bright young people. When I talk to you individually, I see how bright you are. Eastern India, unfortunately, has not had this entrepreneurial bent. There are no startups here. There are no technology companies here. Start one. I could go on and on, but I would say, if you are not wanting to go very big, specialize. Maybe 1 or 2 young people will get together, specialize and offer a boutique range of services. Now, let me tell you one thing. Section 144, which prohibits an auditor from rendering non-audit services, is likely to be strengthened further or made more strict. That will open opportunities, windows of opportunity for you to render non-audit services. And here I would like to touch on one sensitive area. I do not know. Chartered accountants are very scared of competition. Firstly, we don't understand competition. And secondly, we are scared. We want empanelment. We want allotment. Arey bhai, we are in the field, we are in the marketplace. Empanelment, allotment, if it comes, it gives an assured workflow, very good. But we are qualified people, we are all knowledge providers. Why should we be scared of competition? The best way to face competition is to understand competition. To design your services in such a way that they appear to be unique. And that is the way, not by seeking shelter under empanelments and allotments, but by going out in the marketplace and facing competition. The marketplace for services is very different from selling cauliflowers and potatoes. Cauliflowers and potatoes are products. Your services are unique. So as long as you attach that uniqueness to your service, as long as the purchaser of your service perceives that हाँ इसमें कुछ है, इस बच्चा में कुछ दम है, he'll come to you. You know at what age I came into the profession? I'm scared to say all this because I passed CA at the age of 20 and the institute did not give me membership. So I took a job. So then when I left, I got unemployed at a very young age and came into the profession. I was 23 years of age. And I thought, भाई ये सब बड़ा हस्तियाँ हैं, मुझे कौन काम देगा, कोई नहीं देगा. So I started something which nobody else was doing. And that is the way to start. And this uniqueness will lead you to something else which nobody wants to talk about. Unfortunately, we are in a profession where 90% of the large work is with 4 or 5 firms. This is unique to our profession. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to acknowledge it. These firms have tremendous brands. These are international brands. You will never get these brands. So should you be afraid? No. Because you know what you can get? You can get goodwill. Goodwill is more valuable than a brand. It's also fragile, but it's more valuable. So sooner you offer a package of services to create goodwill for you, the sooner that you will succeed. Friends, I'll end here. All I will say is there will always be threats to the profession. You will get other professionals doing work which hitherto was your preserve only. You will soon get a law, I hope not, but probably you will get a law that small firms does not have to get audited. I hope not, but you may get a law like that. Threats like this will always be there. But should these threats keep you away from the opportunities? I believe that the largest opportunity in this country is the increasing load of compliance. Your clients don't understand what is happening around them. You should guide them. This load of compliance will throw new opportunities. That is how I look at the future, and the future is very bright. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the excellent deliberations. So, I would request the House to come up with the question-answer session. And first, Ranjit Agarwalji is here, the Central Council member. So, he wants to come up with his.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, I have gone through the program today, and when I saw your session at 3 o'clock, I made it a point not to come in the morning, come to here, because I want to listen to you. The kind of deliberation, the kind of knowledge, the kind of which you share, it's always encouraging to me like this CA. One or two points, sir, I just like to clarify. This year I am the chairman of the Committee for Member Industry. And this is the first time the demand by the corporate house is 11,463 in the campus placement, and the supply was only 9,000 CA. So the corporate house and the CA firms are not getting the qualified CA because large number of opportunities exist for them for other places. This is the number, this is the new development we are seeing. So the chartered accountants are not available because 20-30 lakh. The highest package offered by today this campus is 30 lakh rupees. And the average package you have claimed 8 lakh rupees, it is 10.5 lakh rupees. So what I mean to say, you are right, many point you are right, but the demand for the CA in the corporate era is increasing like anything which you have not witnessed in the past. One or two points you are absolutely right, the professor is traditional practice is going away. RBI already said no bank branch audit required in the next 3-4 years. the GST audit, the procedural audit is not required not because we don't want or we are not in demand, because of the technology. Because of the technology that is not required at all. So if this area is strong, other areas should open, like insolvency, cyber audit, forensic audit, valuation, so many areas. And if you see all the areas, only chartered accountants are flourishing like anything. And the third point, sir, institute is now also thinking how to do the stock taking by use of technology that is drone. We are coming out with standard how you can use the drone technology to do the stock taking. So yes, you are right, traditional audit will not be required, but at the same time, huge opportunity. So we have to reskill and further skill our people. That is the main goal. Thank you, sir.
So any questions from the audience? In fact, sir, I have a question from the deliberations that we have, come across. You have very correctly pointed out that the growth is sluggish, and definitely opportunities, we need to spread out our wings in other areas. Definitely, specializations is required. But sir, do you think that the fight or the challenge that we are facing now, and particularly what Banerjee has just now mentioned, do you think, sir, the challenge is with the technology? Are we facing the challenge with the technology, or do we have the fight against the technology?
I think the challenge is in two places. One is in our education system. See, if I am entering a profession after passing the first qualifying exam, whatever that is, these days the names change, and then the pass percentage is 20-30%, there is a problem. See, if in a medical college, if in the final year 50% of the students fail, the principal of the medical college will be sacked. Here, the president does not get sacked, unfortunately. In an IIM, in the final year, if the pass percentage is similar, I think to get brighter minds into this profession, we have to fix the education system. When the chartered accountancy profession was designed, it was designed as a hands-on learning system with no school, no college, only distance learning, postal tuition. Today, without tuition, nobody will appear in the exam. So something fundamental has changed, which the institute is not able to tackle. We must face this. There's something wrong with our education system. The second thing is with our mindset. Though we have CPE, these are only a mandatory legal requirement. The continuous learning process, which is essential to flourish in a profession, we somehow, I find that fast, you see, I sit on institute boards, as you know, I unfortunately sit on boards of very large companies in the country. When I sit on boards, I find that knowledge is outdated. And other professions, especially MBA finances, are displaying abundant up-to-date knowledge. I think the mindset of refusing to accept that the ecosystem can train us and our education system, these two things have to be fixed.
So one thing is there, what I feel, that you have also mentioned, that about the compliances, the huge sets of compliances are there in various laws that we need to comply. Now, don't you think, sir, that this compliances, this can also be managed? This can also be managed by some non-CAs. So don't you think that there is a competition between the chartered accountants and the non-chartered accountants as far as the compliance part is concerned?
Yes, lot of the legal compliance can be looked after by others, but compliance is also in tax. Compliance is also in the way you present the financial statements to your stakeholders. So there is a lot of work for chartered accountants.
I have one of the questions.
Just
Sure.
Kishore.
Deepankar was saying that the traditional practices are not there. It is outdated right now. So my question is, if this is so, then what is your opinion about the old and senior members? Should they adapt themselves in the present day environment, or they will go away from the profession?
I can only answer this by sharing with you something I don't normally share with others. My age is 73.
I don't have any question. I have some observation taking clue from Mr. Chatterjee's deliberation. He has given a statistics correctly, presenting the statistics. Economy is going, number of CS found, and particularly in Eastern Leon is not going. What does it mean? Player is less, demand is more. So there is a scope for chartered accountants. And if you go by logic. Second, my thinking, I also believe the traditional field of attesting function is day to day by narrowing our scope. But at the same time, when there is a competition among ourselves, competition from the similar fields, if there is no competition, the chartered accountants since 1949 we are compliant because we have the license. To borrow the language from Mr. Deepankar Chatterjee, shall my signature. But when there is a competition, that will sharpen our knowledge. That we want, competition should come in our field so that profession stand on the occasion and we can say we are the best among all the other fields of our areas. Another is, what I feel there is a big scope for the SMEs. What we are thinking, I am thinking in a different way. SMEs cannot afford CFO, what the CFO is doing in the big organizations. But they need a CFO, they cannot afford. So they need a CFO from their partner or proprietor. They should be de facto CFO of the organizations. And if we can sell that expertise, what the CFO is doing for the big organizations, because that is required. In a small firm, in some cases, FEMA is required. In some cases, they are thinking of taking the firm from the outside. What is the FEMA requirement? So there are so many things are interrelated. What they ask from a small CFO, from the proprietor, in case of a big firm, they have the divisions. They can say, okay, this is your problem, you go to second umbrella. They will give the answer. So I think what the Mr. Chatterjee is saying correctly, if we acquire knowledge, what the knowledge should have, so we should have a knowledge on the reasonable working knowledge on the various commercial field, and at the same time we should acquire knowledge on the various commercial act like Sale of Goods Act, Indian Contract Act, FEMA, money laundering, this is also part of FEMA. So I think the small and SME CF firm is the number is more. If their partner and proprietor can acquire knowledge of the various fields, because small client cannot afford the various persons, they cannot hire various people, they expect that one people will give all type of services. And if you can give, you can acquire the task, and task is the starting point for the profession. So I do believe we don't have any other way than to acquire knowledge, and the way we will acquire knowledge is a different thing. And at the same time, we believe our institute will think how the exam and the education should be restructured in such a way so it will be up to date
and number of students who pass out should be increased. I am not taking on at the cost of the quality, but at the same time, otherwise the other person will come and acquire the vacuum position. Thank you very much.
I have a question. You stated that this audit for small firms will be going, small enterprises. But if you see in any government sector, if anybody wants to go for registration, they say last 3 years balance, audited balance sheet should bring. In a bank, when you take a loan, they say last 3 years balance sheet is required. So these small companies come for audits. And if the government wants that they should go, they should pass regulations stating that in the banking industry for small loans up to this extent need not be audited. Or in the case of registration in government sector. These things are too kindly explain.
I have no views on the NFRA consultative paper about abolition of audits for smaller firms. I hope that does not come. But this is the international trend, so we should be mentally prepared. But nobody can stop voluntary audits.
This is Prosha. Just one question. You have spoken about how we should adapt to the world. But we have a lot to change the world. This is one aspect I did not touch upon. I'll just say it this way. Ranjit just spoke. You also spoke in tandem. The government is thinking this. Reduce the audit. Thing is, our institute should develop that intelligentsia to represent that if we reduce the audit, the frauds, the percentage of frauds can increase. This intelligentsia has to be developed. We have lovely people, Indranila. In taxation, I think he's one of the best. He writes privately in this WhatsApp messages. But he's wonderful, he's an asset. If he's told before the finance bill is passed to take the interpretation of each sought after proposition. Similarly, what I say, today, slowly, I have raised an issue. In fact, there is a lot of members out here. How come the central statutory auditors are accepting tax audits of branches at the cost of the smaller medium auditors, us? What the branches, banks have started doing, they have given it to, I came to know this year as the first time in PNB. So I raised a question in that open meeting. What magic wand did PNB or my statutory central auditors suddenly design so as to see they can go and against one entry of legal fees 8 lakhs, they can find out how many lawyers got paid more than 30,000. In a repairs and maintenance of 12 lakhs of one particular any branch, how can they make out whether a contractor has been paid more than 4 times so as the aggregate is more than 1 lakh and hence his TDS should have been done. This is, I am offering myself, accepting an assignment, knowing fully well I cannot do justice, I cannot do a draw a true and correct picture. Our institute needs to become stronger. The people we send up, Randy, with all due respect to you, they have to be, as we said, knowledge, intelligence goes with it also. Just having knowledge is not good enough. Using it intelligently for the benefit of the profession and let us change the world rather than we accept the world as it is. Thank you.
You know why I love coming to this such get-togethers? Because people who ask questions answer those questions themselves. Thank you.
So, friends, this is really an interesting session, but again, the paucity of time is another issue. So, and very importantly, friends, that one of the finest speakers on corporate laws and corporate accounting and the Central Council member, say Vishal Doshiji, is already here among us. So, I would take permission from the House to wrap up this CA Dipankar Chatterjee's session. There are lots of questions, lots of confusions and lots of queries, and definitely this is something very interesting, and the way he has delivered, really we have enriched ourselves. So with this note, I am concluding this session. And I would like to invite CA Vishal Doshi ji on the dais. She will be deliberating on CARO 2020 and the amendment Schedule 3. And I would also like to invite CA Devayan Patro on the dais to make a short introduction on CA Vishal Doshi ji.
So, a very good afternoon to all of you, dignitaries on the dais, off the dais. Yesterday it was being said that, in fact, I am the host of Vishal Doshi at Kolkata because we had a session yesterday at EIRC, today now at Accountants Library, and then again he will be addressing the students in my ICASA program in the evening. And CA Vishal Doshi is not new to Kolkata. Although he is a Central Council member from Baroda, he is born and brought up in Kolkata. He has been here for 22 years. Became a chartered accountant here and also passed from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. He was the chairman of the Baroda branch in 2005-06, was the vice chairman of WIRC during 2020-2021, and now he is a Central Council member, and by virtue of that he serves various standing committees and non-standing committees. But very importantly, he is the vice chairman of the AASB, that is the Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, the expert committee of ICAI, and another important committee. Dipankar sir was mentioning about the curriculum, the course, and Vishal sir is the vice chairman of the Board of Studies Academic. As a professional, in fact, Dipankar sir was also saying that there are market segments, small, medium and large. And we have a professional who has moved from the small to the medium and the large and is currently the auditors of various government companies, multinational companies and PSUs. He has also implemented Ind AS and accounting standards in various big corporates. And the topic that he will be talking about or speaking on has also grown in the same manner, that is CARO, from 2003 to 2016 to 2020. And I think he is one of the best persons to speak on this topic. So let us welcome him with a big round of applause. I would request CA Prashanjit Ghosh to please come forward to offer a flower bouquet to Sir. And I would also request CA Santosh Kedia to join him to offer a memento to Vishal sir. We did not have amongst us two of the dignitaries in the morning. CA Ranjit Agarwal, Central Council member, he is amongst us now. I would request the Vice President CA Sanjay Bhattacharya to please come forward and offer him a memento on behalf of the Accountants Library. After we offer a memento to CA Vishal Doshi. And next I will request CA Indu Chatrak, past President of the Accountants Library, to come forward and offer a flower bouquet to CA Vishnu Tulsi and Treasurer EIRC. And without wasting any more time, I would now request Vishal sir to take over the charge from here. Presence of past ITAT member, CA Narendra Saini, who also happens to be a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. I would request CA Manish Tiwari to please hand over a flower bouquet to him. Vishal sir, it's all yours now.
Very good afternoon, friends. Sitting on the dais, Manishji, Indrolita, I hope I pronounced it the way that I am a Calcutta, sir. Animeshji, Ranjit Bhai, Devan Bhai, all the seniors in the profession and my dear friends. It is indeed a privilege to be here standing before you and I would say creating awareness on the topic that has been given to me, Schedule 3 and CARO, that has been the talk of the town, at least I would say amongst the professionals of the country nowadays. Friends, before I go to the topic specific, I was interestingly hearing sir, the earlier speaker sir, and I also have a few thoughts. In fact, I do make presentations on practice management tips for the small and medium practitioners. I'll just share a couple of incidences. Coming from Baroda, and I'll talk about my managing partner. Many of you, because he has come here to make presentations, would be knowing him, CA Milind Mehta. We don't have a tribunal bench in Vadodara because Ahmedabad is just about 100 kilometers away. The ITAT is at Ahmedabad. And when he qualified, after he qualified, I'm saying that was way back in 85 and the early 90s, there was always a dearth of professionals, chartered accountants who could represent the cases at the ITAT Ahmedabad of the Baroda clients, Baroda corporates. I would say, like any of us, nobody would have the experience. In those times, we didn't have so much of technology, we didn't have so much of facility of the infrastructure and all. And I still remember, though I was not at that time a part of KC Mehta and Company, but I'm definitely aware. Every week, 2 days, he used to travel to Ahmedabad, sit in the ITAT room, and just observe what the learned speakers, or I would say the representatives, be it the AR or the professionals, how they would represent, what they would say, what are the norms, what are the rules and regulations, the case laws, and then he used to study. He used to do that for 6-7 months. And then he took up the first case at the ITAT. Another incident. So now I'll tell you, going forward, what as a principle, all of us need to believe, or I would say practice, if we want to grow. I believe in one thing, सबसे पहले तो अपने को free करना पड़ेगा. We are so much involved in the day-to-day compliance, day-to-day activities that somehow we do not find time for ourselves to grow, to venture into new areas. I think I see so many youngsters over here, and that is one of the very, very important things, and which I believe Ranjit Bhai and at the council have been saying that we need to collaborate, we need to merge. Very simple, आज अगर हम लोग को कुछ होता है, do we go to a general practitioner or do we go to a multi-speciality hospital? How many of you will still be comfortable today going to a GP and not to a multi-speciality? Very few. Multi-speciality में क्या होता है? If I am going with a particular symptoms, so then there is a specialized doctor who is there, who will look. फिर वो report में आता है, अच्छा ये भी है. Then you have some other doctor coming in. So it is all services under one roof, which is very much required even for us. If you want to grow, with respect to the type of clients that you are catering to, no client wants that income tax के लिए A के पास जाए, audit के लिए B के पास जाए, GST के लिए C के पास जाए. But they want experts in each of the areas. And let me tell you, the way the laws are changing, it's humanly impossible for one person to be an expert or a specialist in all the areas. And therefore, collaboration, networking, mergers, partnership is the need of the day. And the earlier we realize, I believe it's the better for us. And I'll share one more experience, friends. It's with me, a live experience. Again, it's almost a 15-year-old story, but life story, yeah. My son, उसका school में sports day था, and my wife was traveling, she was not there, so I had to go and attend that. You know, otherwise हम लोग जाते नहीं हैं ये सब में, but जाना पड़ा था उस दिन. So I was just sitting, so he was getting ready for the parade and all those things, and there was this small, you know, the kindergarten race that was going on just in front of where I was sitting. In that, what I saw, what I observed, and I still remember it. कभी-कभी अपने को क्या है वो life touching incidents याद आ जाते हैं, तो याद रह जाता है सब. So there was this boy who was running ahead. He was, I would say, till that point in time, the leader, and he was just a few meters away from the finishing line. What he did, he looked back. The moment he looked back, the person, the boy, who was just after him a few meters, raced ahead of him and won the race. तब से मैंने सीखा है कि अपने आगे कौन है उसको देखने का है, पीछे कौन है उसको देखने की जरूरत नहीं है, वो देखेगा कि उसके आगे कौन है. And the same thing applies to us in our practice also. This is what I believe, friends, that if we look behind, we crave कि अरे 100 रुपए में सर्टिफिकेट दे रहा है, वो 200 में सर्टिफिकेट दे रहा है, ऐसा कर रहा है, वैसा कर रहा है, we will never grow because we are comparing ourselves or we are compelling ourselves to be like that person. Why don't we come and look forward? अरे वो सर्टिफिकेट का 2500 ले रहा है, वो सर्टिफिकेट में ये सारे गाइडेंस नोट फॉलो कर रहा है. The day we start doing that, the way we start looking forward, I can assure you will definitely grow and grow very fast. So with this, I just wanted to share some of these things. I can take a full 1 hour session, but I know that is not what is there today. Today we have to talk something more serious on the subject proper. So friends, my first is a disclaimer that whatever I will be talking today, they would all be my personal views, not the views of the institute or any of the committees or the groups of the ICI or the council. So again, just to give a short background, CARO 2020, the number itself suggests कि ये actually 2 साल पहले announce हो गया था. In 2020 March, it was to be applied or implemented immediately. The first COVID wave came and it got postponed by 1 year. In the meantime, what happened? So, see, CARO being part of the auditor's report, friends, what happens is that there are onerous responsibilities that are put on the auditors without management also maybe an agreement or certifying or confirming any of them. And it was a long list of the changes that were made in the CARO 2020. So subsequent to this CARO getting announced, the institute started interacting with the MCA and discussed that a lot of these provisions which the auditors is expected to report upon, which first the management should actually report, management should certify, and then on that basis it becomes easier for the auditor to carry it forward to certify it further. There were a lot of deliberations that happened, though I was not in the council at that point in time, but there were a lot of deliberations that happened with the MCA, and in 2021 March, the MCA notified amendments to Schedule 3. A lot of these amendments were more or less in sync with the reporting requirements that was expected in the CARO. Again, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for us, second wave of COVID came in 2021, and therefore CARO 2020 as well as the Schedule 3 both got further, I would say, delayed or postponed by another 1 year. And so now we are here in 2022. There is no extension, no postponement. Almost all the listed companies have already applied to it. And let me share with you, friends, that we were discussing about the small and medium practitioners and the small and medium enterprises. And I can assure you that the type of changes that have been brought about in Schedule 3 as well as in Caro, unless we are able to, or I would say unless we start from Monday, that is 30th of May 2022, it will be extremely difficult for us to sign off the financial statements of companies for March 22 by September 22. This is the assurance that I can give. Because we have signed off a few of the listed companies, and see, listed companies, they do have a lot of infrastructure, they have people, they have systems by which they have been able to implement, but we saw the challenges over there, and just visualizing from there that what challenges would come to those small and medium enterprises where they do not have these things in place, it's going to be difficult. And let me again share with you, there would not be any extension because of the implementation of Schedule 3 and Caro. So let us all keep these things in mind and ensure that we start working on it as early as possible. So Schedule 3, friends, there are 3 divisions to Schedule 3, Division 1, Division 2 and Division 3. Division 1 typically applies to, I would say, all the private companies, the non-Ind AS companies, where we have the accounting standards rules as notified by the MCA. There was earlier 2006, now it is 2021. So these are the companies to whom Division 1 applies. Division 2 of Schedule 3, it applies to the listed companies and all companies having net worth in excess of 250 crores. To them, the Ind AS applies. Right? I hope everybody knows what Ind AS is. To them, those standards apply, the Ind AS standards apply, and therefore they are covered under Division 2. There are specific disclosure requirements under Division 2 for them. Division 3 under Schedule 3 is for NBFCs, which are under Ind AS. So NBFCs in excess of 250 crores, having net worth in excess of 250 crores, are covered by Division 3 to the Schedule 3. So NBFCs which do not have net worth in excess of 250 crores, they would follow the AS and they would be under Division 1. So there are 3 divisions. So whenever we open Schedule 3, please ensure that we are referring to the correct division while we are interacting with the client or implementing certain things. So the background I already shared with you, that it was notified in 21, more or less to bring in sync with the Caro requirements. And there are 3 guidance notes, friends, over here, each for one division, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, which the revised guidance note have been released already by the ICI. So I would request you, please download them, read them, and even I would go a step forward, kindly share them within your office groups and all, that it becomes easier for everybody to read and implement them. One more request to the accountants library and the organizers, and this request I make everywhere, that Schedule 3 is to be applied by the companies, and therefore the request is that if you can arrange a program for the clients of our members, I think that is required very much, because it would otherwise be very difficult for our members to go and educate each and every client about whatever are the changes. And it would always be better if you can have a common meeting where you can invite the clients of all our members, and it becomes easier for everybody to understand that these are the changes that are there and people can get geared up with respect to that. So friends, the first change under Division 1 is a mandatory rounding off. So till now, whatever जो भी फिगर्स आते थे ट्रायल बैलेंस में, आइदर उसी को हम लोग लेके रीलुकअप करके या कैसे भी कॉपी पेस्ट करके हम लोग को बैलेंस शीट P&L करके we used to finalize the financials. Now there is a mandatory rounding off requirement that has been introduced in Schedule 3, Division 1. So the requirement is that if it is less than 100 crores, then the round off would happen to the nearest hundreds, thousands, lakhs or millions, or the decimal thereof. And if it is more than 100 crores, then lakhs, millions or crores. The challenge here, especially when we talk of the small and medium enterprises, division 1 wale, is there is no rounding off under the income tax return. वहाँ पे तो full figures ही देने हैं. But there is a rounding off that is required under the Companies Act. So what is the option? Do we prepare two set of Excel files parallelly? एक rounded off वाली and एक full figure वाली, because immediately ITR में file करना होता है, and the pressures in which we work, we all know, I did not mention that I feel that it would become extremely difficult. So what is the solution for this? Anybody? क्या करेंगे? So you will have to, sir, in that case, what sir has suggested is that पूरा financials बना के उसको divide by 1 lakh कर देंगे, to round it off to lakhs. So just continuing that, what sir has indicated is correct. In Excel there is a formula. I will not teach Excel over here, don't worry. But in Excel there is a formula where you freeze the rounded off to in a cell. And so you can, if you put 1, then it would be full figures. वहाँ पे आप 100 लिखेंगे तो 100 में round off हो जाएगा, 1000s लिखेंगे तो 1000s में round off हो जाएगा. Right? So maybe I would request you, if somebody is, you can just share that formula, and it becomes easier for everybody, because you can't have two sets of financials, and especially with the number of changes that are happening at the last minute, and the number of clients and the pressures that we are handling, it becomes extremely difficult. So please ensure that you are able to run that formula by which the rounding off, just one word of caution, rounding off जब करते हैं तब वो 1 + 1 + 1 कभी 4 हो जाता है. I don't know how many of you have experienced, तो उतना manually करना पड़ेगा. I'll be very candid on that. But at least otherwise it will save a lot of time, that you don't have to prepare two sets of financials and keep a hard copy of both the sets, the rounded off and the full figure, both of them. But this is a mandatory requirement. And मैंने जब Monday onwards बोला, my first thought was that we should start last year के जो financials है, March 21 के audited clients के, उसी को लेके we will have to create a fresh template, because there are a lot of changes that are there, and this is the first change. तो लास्ट ईयर के जो मार्च 21 नंबर को उसको प्रीवियस ईयर करके यू विल हैव टू स्टार्ट दी राउंडिंग ऑफ फॉर्मूला टू, यू विल हैव टू स्टार्ट अप्लाइंग दैट. कभी कभी क्या होता है कि राउंडिंग ऑफ में भी वो क्लाइंट छोटा है तो उसको कौन से राउंडिंग ऑफ करना है वो भी एक डिसीजन मेकिंग होता है. समझिए उसका 25 लाख का टर्नओवर है, अगर आप लैक्स में राउंड ऑफ करेंगे तो 25 पॉइंट समथिंग दिखेगा P&L में. सो द क्लाइंट वुड फील कि अरे इतना छोटा नंबर क्यों दिखा रहे हैं, then you might want into hundreds or thousands, whatever decision making. So it's always better to be geared up rather than wait till the last. And the rounding of threshold 100 crores is not linked to turnover; it is linked to your total income. So other income भी अगर है, mutual funds, shares, any gains are there, then all that will be added, and then you will have the total income जिसके basis पे rounding off होगा. Okay, I just ask, how many over here are having the in-days clients? So it will be, see, when we talk of the P&L, you will have the income, so you have the operating income, you have the other income, right? Some sale of goods, services. So वो जो total income आपका आता है, which will always be gross. Gross, yes, that is what you have to show, or that is what you have to consider for the purpose of rounding off. So division 1 on the face of the balance sheet. चेंज क्या किया है, प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट एंड इक्विपमेंट एंड इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स, ये वर्ड ऐड किए हैं, एंड इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स, दैट इज वन चेंज ऑन द फेस. एंड सेकंड इज इंस्टेड ऑफ टेंजिबल एसेट्स द वर्ड्स प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट एंड इक्विपमेंट हैव बीन यूज्ड. ठीक है, ये तो बहुत सिंपल चेंज है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. Here I would just like to mention, जो not related to this amendment or any such thing. How many of us use the terminology fixed assets in the financial statements? Yeah, so now that has to be replaced, because there is nothing like fixed assets when we talk of the accounting standards. the AS10 जो हम लोग पढ़े थे एग्जाम के टाइम में, that has been replaced with AS10 ही है, but property plant equipment since 2016. So जहाँ पे भी fixed assets आता है, like I said कि आपको पूरा structure ही इस बार change करना है. अभी तक तो क्या होता था, copy paste करके year change करके करते थे. But now since we are going to have a fresh structure, one request is fixed assets tally replace it with property plant and equipment. Second thing, AS6 depreciation accounting is no longer in existence. So in the significant accounting policies या कहीं पे भी अगर AS6 के reference हम लोग दे रहे हैं, then we should not use that reference. Either we give the AS10 reference because now depreciation is a part of AS10 itself. So AS6 के references we need to change either to AS10 or you might need to change the wordings of the policy that you don't give reference to any of the standard, maybe 6, 10 या जो भी है. So these I thought I'll just bring it to your notice. These are the changes with respect to Division 1. On Division 2, on the face of the financials or face of the balance sheet, I would say, lease liabilities has now been added under current and non-current portion both. In case you have a question with your add here, these are for Ind AS. Under Ind AS, the standard 116 on lease, it was introduced just 2 years back. Normally हम लोग क्या, how many of us remember finance lease का calculation and all? मैंने तो छोड़ दिया था एग्जाम में, चॉइस में, इतना complicated था. I know, that is why I am asking कोई है हिम्मत वाला जिसने पढ़ा भी हो और आज याद भी हो, you know? चलो एक दो है, great, congratulations. So this is very similar what 116 says. अभी हम लोग normally lease में क्या करते हैं that if we have taken anything, any property on lease, जो rent पे करते हैं हम लोग P&L में charge off कर देते हैं, right? Now what 116 says that because you have a rent agreement which is there, which gives you a right to use asset, you have to recognize that right as an asset in the financial statements. And against that asset, you have a liability to pay the lease rental as per the agreement 3 साल, 5 साल, 10 साल जो भी है. So that liability should also be there in your financial statements. So this is what the accounting under Ind AS 116 is all about on lease. So the confusion was कि ये जब lease का standard आया, अभी तक schedule 3 में लिखा हुआ था lease liability with respect to finance lease obligations. So these typically now 116 they were not finance lease, but then there was an asset liability recognition that was required. तो इसमें asset आप जो recognize करते थे उसका क्या होता था? It would get amortized over the period of lease, the balance life of the lease, and the liability you would unwind every year. प्रेजेंट वैल्यू पहले करना था, उसका आप अनवाइंड करेंगे, जो अनवाइंडिंग पोर्शन फाइनेंस कॉस्ट P&L में जाएगा, और जो रेंट आप पे करते हैं एवरी ईयर, दैट पेमेंट ऑफ रेंट वुड गेट एडजस्टेड अगेंस्ट दिस लायबिलिटी, इट वुड नॉट गेट चार्ज टू P&L. सो दिस इज द होल अकाउंटिंग दैट इज देयर. तो P&L चार्ज क्या आएगा? आपका एसेट का अमोर्टाइजेशन एंड द अनवाइंडिंग फाइनेंस कॉस्ट. So there was this confusion कि कहाँ पे इसको represent करना है. So by this amendment they have said that we will show it on the face of the balance sheet under current and non-current portion. So earlier it was being shown either under borrowings, the non-current and other financial liabilities, the current portion, but now it is on the face. Again, this is for Division 2 and Division 3. Ind AS, we all know as a concept there is nothing like a prior period. हम लोग AS में तो क्या होता है, कुछ पुराने साल का कुछ रह गया होता है तो the face of the P&L we show as a prior period item, we give a disclosure and चलता है. Under Ind AS there is nothing like a prior period. So if it is insignificant, if it is not material, you charge off to the P&L of the current year under the respective head. If it is material, then you go back to the year to which it relates and make the changes. अगर previous year का है तो previous year में change करिए, उसके पहले का है तो opening reserves में जाके change करिए. But under the equity share capital, how do you change that? Prior period अगर होता है तो reserves का तो opening reserve में कर सकते हैं, equity share capital का. So they have introduced this where you show wherever there is a change in the equity share capital due to any prior period error, एक column add कर दिया है and then you have the restated amount. Since there are not much over here members who have Ind AS, I will not spend more time on this aspect. The next disclosure is with respect to the promoter's shareholding applicable to Division 1, 2 and 3. Friends, two more clarifications. A, we have a lot of work from Monday. Barabar? Second thing, whatever disclosures are there, these are in addition to the existing disclosures which are already there. So we used to have a disclosure of 5% shareholding से ज़्यादा जो भी है उसका disclosure था. Now further there is a disclosure requirement कि promoters जो है उसका shareholding क्या है. So who is a promoter? A promoter has been defined under 269 of the Companies Act. So first prospectus है या offer document है या जो भी है उसमें अगर promoter define किया तो वो promoter है, which is typically for the listed companies and all, और जिसके annual return में आपने promoter classify किया है, those would be the promoters. Second category is the people who control the affairs of the company, maybe as a director, as a shareholder or otherwise. Then that person would also be a promoter. So वो अगर 5% से कम भी shares hold कर रहा है तो उसका name with shareholding percentage would be required to be disclosed. And the third category, a very interesting one, जिसकी advice पे the board of directors is accustomed to act. Now let us say, as a chartered accountant, I am not an auditor of a company, and I have that client where I am rendering management services. What I am doing is, मैं उसका MIS देखता हूँ, monthly वहाँ पे जाता हूँ, I have every week I will go there for 2 days, I will go through all their accounts and all their business transactions, I will advise them कि भाई कहाँ पे क्या interest saving होता है, products का कैसे होना चाहिए, manufacturing, trading, their internal control systems, processes, there are so many things that are there in a day-to-day business which I am advising on. And then they interact with me and they more or less they are accustomed to act based on the advice that I am giving. I would become a promoter in such a situation. The only exception is that if I am there in a professional capacity. Now, professional capacity, मेरे को कोई definition मिला नहीं. My only thumb rule was that if I am having a LOE, right, engagement letter sort of, and I am raising an invoice for whatever services that I am providing to them, in that case I can say that I am there in a professional capacity and therefore I am not a promoter. Right? But this would come in case I am holding any shares. So this is what is the additional disclosure requirements that are there, which will be applicable to all companies. So even in private companies, promoter to रहेंगे ही because there will be some people who will be controlling the affairs of the company. So even if they are holding more than 5%, तो वो वाला disclosure 5% रहेगा. In addition ये भी आएगा. And if it is less than 5%, then also their disclosure would come. The next change is on the current maturities of the long-term debt. This is a reclassification, but an important one. It may have some impact somewhere. So this is typically where we have the term loans. Long-term debt है, term loans है, where we show कि next 12 months में जो installments due हो रहे हैं, that we show under the current maturities of long-term debt under the current category. Till now, Schedule 3 required that to be under the other current liabilities. Now this is getting reclassified to short-term borrowings. Where this can be a challenge is that if the client has borrowed money from any bank or financial institution where they have given ratios, और ratio में ये current maturities को intentionally or unintentionally, because it was getting classified under other current liabilities, if they have not added back or not make suitable adjustments in the ratio for this short-term borrowings or the current maturities of long-term debt, now that it will get classified under short-term borrowings, there is a possibility that there might be some change in the ratios that they might have submitted somewhere earlier to the lenders or anything. So in case those submissions have been done, you might need to tell your client that this is an impact that will be there. We can't do anything about it, but we just need to highlight in case there is any impact with respect to any of the ratios which they have considered in the past. So this is a reclassification that is required under the current maturities of long-term debt. Trade payables aging schedule. अभी तक receivables का देते थे 6 months and more than 6 months. Now on the payables side, there is a requirement to show the aging schedule. Friends, this aging is on the overdue amounts. So ये जो 4 buckets दिए हैं, 1 to less than 1 year, 1 to 2, 2 to 3 and more than 3, that is from the due date, overdue amounts. We give MSME details with respect to the trade payables. Further, इसमें अगर आप देखेंगे तो bifurcation है MSME disputed, undisputed, and other than MSME disputed and undisputed. Now, what is a dispute? So, if you go through the guidance note, it says that a dispute need not be only a legal dispute. कि जहाँ पे advocate का notice आया हो या ऐसा कुछ हो, that ऐसा नहीं है कि उसी का हम लोग dispute मानते हैं. There can be disputes where your client, has challenged or raised something with respect to the quantity delivered, the quality of the material that has been delivered. In one case, I also observed that there was a challenge or a dispute that was raised with respect to the timing of the delivery. Let us say some client wanted something on the 5th of March and the vendor supplied it on 25th of March. So, वो जो 20 दिन का delay हुआ है, उसके लिए he has raised a dispute that I would not be able to pay you because of certain schedules that जो connected थे and whatever. But very important is that the dispute, as an auditor, we should have proper audit documentation with respect to a disputed amount. Any email correspondence, advocate के notice है, कोई letter लिखा है. I would not believe that a WhatsApp message we should consider as a part of the audit documentation. This is my view. And phone से बात हुआ है, चलो मैं आपकी बात करवा देता हूँ. All these things we should not take the risk because, friends, all these numbers are now going in the public domain. And I would not be surprised if this government, in couple of years, for such companies also brings in XBRL reporting. Then each and every number would get digitized, it would get recorded, and it would throw up some exception report or whatever it might be. So it's very important that the disputed, whatever is the basis of dispute, the documentation as an auditor we should keep on record. Second thing is that as an auditor we will also need to check, I would say, use our auditor's judgment about the numbers. Let us say, hypothetically, there is an amount of 5 lakhs which comes in 2 to 3 years, non-MSME, undisputed. What should we do as an auditor? 2 to 3 years है, undisputed है और payment नहीं हुआ. Sorry? Undisputed. Yeah, in that cell, 2 to 3 years, more than 2 to 3 years, 5 lakh undisputed.
What is the reason for dispute that is to be explored?
What is the reason for non-payment is what we need to ensure. Right? Like I said, see all these things, अभी वो income tax के पास भी जाएगा ये सब. तो whether it is to be offered for income, whether it is a genuine transaction, why is it, ऐसा कौन सा vendor है आपका जो 2 साल 3 साल से 5 लाख रुपए बाकी है, मांग नहीं रहा है, क्या वो बंद हो गया है, भाग गया है? So these are the questions when we plot these numbers, we will have to as an auditor ask a lot of questions कि कौन सा नंबर डिस्प्यूट है तो उसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन चाहिए, अनडिस्प्यूटेड है, ज़्यादा ओल्ड है तो उसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन चाहिए कि ये जेन्युइन है, नहीं है. So all these things we will need to examine. Another thing, MSME, whatever we are showing as the closing outstanding in the other note, MSME की जो details देते हैं closing outstanding का, that also we should match with the total of MSME in this disputed plus undisputed दोनों मिला के. We should add both of them and ensure that it matches. ऐसा नहीं हो कि कहीं गलती से रह जाए, जब अपलोड होता है तब some error gets reflected. By that time the financial statements भी sign हो गए होंगे and then we would not be able to make any changes to the audited financials. So please ensure that आप जब Excel के templates बनाते हैं, all these checks and balances you build it in the template. The next question that comes, because the notification or the standard guidance note says कि ये जो total का column है आपका, that should match with the total of trade payables in the financial statements. So this talks about just overdue. So you will need to add 2 more columns to this. The first column is on not due amounts. Right? समझिए 25 मार्च को मटेरियल आया है, सर्विस उसका ड्यू डेट है 5 अप्रैल या 10 अप्रैल. So as on 31st March it is not due. So that amount would get plotted in the not due column. And one more column that the guidance note it talks about is with respect to unbilled. Unbilled क्या होता है? On the payable side. I don't know how many of your clients are using the SAPs and the ERPs. What happens is when the material is received, GRN generate होता है. GRN जब generate होता है तो inventory आपका load होता है, inventory debit होता है. But invoice is not received, so that amount gets parked into a GRI account. And services होती है तो it goes into a SRI account. जब financial statements में total जब grouping होता है तो ये ledger जो है, because material or services have already been received, it gets clubbed as a trade payable. So what the guidance note says कि invoice नहीं आया है तो due भी नहीं हुआ है, but invoice ही नहीं आया तो you have one more column of unbilled and such amounts you put in the unbilled. So your unbilled plus not due plus these 4 columns of overdue, ये जो पूरा है, this total should match with the trade payables in your financial statements. Right? So one more checks and balance which we need to ensure. अगर ड्यू डेट नहीं लिख रही है, then what? See, many times अभी वो डेली रेगुलर सप्लायर है, वो सब फॉर्मेलिटी में मानते नहीं है, तो क्या करेंगे? पेएबल में नेबल वाले भी होते हैं. From the date of invoice may not be, what it says is the date you record the transactions in your book of account, in your books of account, because that is the day when the client has accepted that liability, that this amount is now due, it is now payable to the vendor. So that date of the recording of transaction, because it would be compliance with accounting standards also, compliance with the legal term also, जो भी है उसके बाद ही वो entry liability का post करेंगे, so that becomes the due date. And unfortunately, because that becomes the due date, there would not be any credit period. तो 31st March को कुछ भी होगा तो that will become your overdue. And it would get reported maybe in the less than 1 year column, most probably as on 31st of March. So these are the things that we need to take care of. The challenge that I see is due date से accounting बहुत सारे clients नहीं करते हैं. Agreed? So what happens, what it says is, because there are a lot of processes by which many times in manufacturing companies there are the QC processes which happen, let us say raw materials कुछ आता है, packing material आता है, तो it's only after approval of QC and everything that the bills gets posted. Then there are these approval mechanisms, or I would say the hierarchy, where depending on the amount, किसकी क्या authority है, किसने pass किया, so there are various ways in which the different organizations work as far as the approvals are concerned or before a liability gets crystallized. So if you feel that in the client's case the invoice date itself becomes a due date, you can do it, but then what happens in that case, for each of the outstanding amount you will have to go back to the invoice date, you will have to verify the invoice date, you will have to verify the terms and conditions whether the liability or the due is subject to any conditions.
The question is, this will give rise to a dispute as to what should constitute a due date, because the supplier will not accept the date on which I have processed the bill and accounted for.
I agree.
It is my invoice date.
So that is what I said, sir. You can consider, but then there will be so many suppliers, so many invoices, so many payables that would come under that. And if you ask me, I am going by what the guidance note says, that the day the company, because ultimately liability I have to pay, the day I record it in the books or I accept that as per the applicable norms and all, this is due, I will consider that. Which in most of the cases it would be the date when it is passed in the books. Because let us say books में pass नहीं भी हुआ है. What would happen is that later you are recording an invoice as on 30th of March and you are saying that this is overdue by 6 months. That itself would entail a lot of work from the auditor side, or I would say before that from the company side, which the auditor would have to work around, and then you might say, so either you have two fields in the system, एक तो booking date होता है, एक आपका invoice date होता है. If you are able to extract a report from that, then that will be a very easy reporting. Otherwise, you will have to go through examining each and every invoice to find out what is the invoice date. Or you go by what the guidance note says, that when you feel that this has crystallized, this liability has crystallized, you take from that date.
And maybe a whatever solution, but see that they have given guidance that one has to show it as something as unbilled amount. The significance of unbilled amount and the billed amount is between the dates on which the invoice is raised.
So, unbilled is that until 31st March, invoice is not received at all.
What you normally take it as a provision. Normally, from the provision amount, we have to just specify that it is so much amount is for unbilled.
Yeah. So, see, provision also, there will be two different types of provisions. Provisions where goods and services are not received, provisions where they are received. So, here we are talking about those which are received. So, I would just like to say that you will have to take a call as to what you want to certify as a overdue. Right? Because from clients to clients and from vendor to vendor also it would be different. But this is what the guidance note specifies, where the due date has not been mentioned. So friends, this additional reporting, the challenge that I see is that we have to give even these numbers, these details for March 21. March 22 के भी इंफॉर्मेशन लेना डिफिकल्ट है आज की डेट में, बट मार्च 21 का भी रिपोर्टिंग करना है, एंड देयरफॉर इट विल इंटेल अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क, though it is only for the outstanding amounts, but you will also have to see with respect to the details and the data that is available, and maybe you will have to tell clients to improvise the way they are doing the accounting, by which going forward at least it becomes easier for you to report on this.
My question is, we have stated that we have to show unbilled amount in column separately, and if we add it with the trade payables, so which account will be debited, purchase account or unbilled account? It will appear in the profit loss account.
Sir, I'll tell you. It depends on the software which you are using.
Yeah.
If I go technically what is required, whenever you purchase anything, your inventory should get debited. Correct? So your inventory gets debited and the unbilled account gets credited. When the invoice comes, the unbilled amount gets debited and the vendor accounts gets credited.
That means it's a balance sheet entry.
Sorry?
It's a balance sheet entry. Inventory will be increased and trade payables will be increased.
Yeah, inventory will be increased, but then when you do the closing stock valuation, if you have consumed it, then automatically, see, I'll tell you again, this is always a confusion. हम लोग जब tally use करते हैं, sir, let me finish. जब हम लोग tally और वैसे softwares use करते हैं, what happens is that we debit the purchase account. एक मिनट, आप पहले सुन लीजिए मेरा पूरा. We debit the purchase account, right, and then we do the closing. We don't take it to the balance sheet under the inventories. What the requirement of the standard is and what the ERPs do is, because they are all ERPs, आपका जो purchase होता है वो डायरेक्ट इन्वेंट्री बैलेंस शीट में जाता है. जैसे जैसे कंज्यूम होता है ऑटोमेटिकली वो बैलेंस शीट के आपके कंजम्पशन में जाता है, और जो रह जाता है दैट इज योर क्लोजिंग इन्वेंट्री. जो टैली वगैरह यूज करते हैं वो क्या करते हैं, वो परचेज में दिखाते हैं एंड देन दे डू अ क्लोजिंग स्टॉक वैल्यूएशन सेपरेटली. क्लोजिंग स्टॉक का इन्वेंट्री अलग से डालते हैं और वो कंजम्पशन में जाता है. दिस इज द मेजर डिफरेंस व्हेन वी टॉक ऑफ द अकाउंटिंग कॉन्सेप्ट्स. सो व्हेन देयर इज एन अनबिल्ड, टिपिकली दैट इज व्हाट आई सेड, क्या कौन सा सॉफ्टवेयर क्या मेथड ऑफ अकाउंटिंग यूज कर रहे हैं, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. अगर आप परचेज वाला टैली वाला यूज कर रहे हैं तो आपका परचेज डेबिट होगा, जीआरआईआर वो अनबिल्ड में जाएगा. फिर अगर वो कंज्यूम हो गया है तो आप जब क्लोजिंग स्टॉक डालेंगे तो वो ऑटोमेटिक क्लोजिंग स्टॉक में नहीं आएगा, आपका कंजम्पशन में चला जाएगा. इफ दैट मटेरियल हैज नॉट येट बीन कंज्यूम, ऑटोमेटिकली आपका क्लोजिंग स्टॉक वैल्यूएशन में आएगा, इट विल बिकम प्रॉफिट न्यूट्रल, दैट लायबिलिटी वुड रिमेन और आपका बैलेंस शीट में आ जाएगा. आई होप आई एम वेरी क्लियर फ्रॉम द अकाउंटिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. Right? So this is how the unbilled would get mapped off. So the next disclosure is with respect to the property, plant, equipment. One question, again a reflection. In the block, when we show in the note, what do we show? We have first is the column on the details, the particulars of the asset. Right? Then we have the gross block, opening, additions, deletions, adjustments, closing. Then we have the depreciation block, opening during the year, on sales or adjustments, closing, दो net block, और नीचे एक line previous year. How many of us use this? Technically it is not correct. Why I am saying, schedule 3 general instructions if we see, what it mentions is for each of the amounts, a comparative has to be given. So, giving one previous year for the whole block is what is technically not correct. For each line item, there is a requirement to show previous year. Sir, plant and machinery, I am saying simple, plant and machinery, आपने current year के सारे figures दिए. Sir, सुन लीजिए, वो आप net block दे रहे हैं, आप हर एक का नहीं दे रहे हैं. What I am trying to say is, opening balance current year का आया है, तो उसका corresponding current year, previous year का opening balance, आपके additions कुछ हो रहा है, तो current year का corresponding previous year का. So for each amount, a comparable has to be given. That is what is the technical requirement, right? अगर आपको देखना there are two formats, या तो एक पूरा previous year का दे दीजिए, current year का दे दीजिए, but रिक्वेस्ट है previous year का दे तो formula देख लीजिएगा, वो कोई और फाइल्स आ रही होगी, and then if you make any changes print में कहीं गड़बड़ नहीं हो जाए, या तो you give current year, previous year, current year, previous year, current year, previous year, you pick up financial statement of any good listed company, और उसका आपको नोट देख लीजिएगा, you will exactly get the format. You will get choice 2-3 format में से, but my request is that is what is the requirement under schedule 3. So please use that format. आप पूरा change कर रहे हैं तो इसको भी साथ में change कर दीजिएगा. So for the property, plant and equipment, additions, disposals, acquisitions to business combinations, revaluation अगर किया है तो revaluation का, adjustments for the capitalization of foreign exchange, borrowing cost कुछ भी है तो ये सारे separately disclosure आपको करने हैं. This is what is the requirement for the property, plant and equipment, and also the depreciation and amortization. This is for all the three divisions. Similar requirement is there for the intangible assets also. Additions, disposals, acquisitions through business combinations, revaluation change. Although intangible में revaluation division 1 में it is not permitted, and then you have the amortization. So for each element, see अभी तक क्या था, this clarity was not there that we have to give for each of the elements. Now this clarity has come कि हर एक में, क्योंकि कभी वो merger, demerger के columns हम लोग mix कर देते थे. Now each one has to be given separately. This is applicable to all the three divisions. The next is a reclassification change again within division 1 of the security deposits given by the company. Means on the asset side of the balance sheet. So earlier we used to show it under long-term loans and advances, the security deposits. अभी उसको reclassify करके other non-current assets में इसको दिखाना है. So this is just a change in the way the place where we are disclosing it. Similar change is there for division 2 also. Loans में दिखा देते security deposits अभी तक because that is what was specified. Now we have to show it under other financial assets, the security deposits. Not so challenging as वो borrowing वाला जो reclassification था, इसमें इतना कोई challenge I don't think आएगा. Trade receivables aging schedule. एक कॉलम ज़्यादा है 6 months का as compared to trade payables. So we used to, अभी तक हम लोग क्या दिखाते थे, secured considered good, secured considered doubtful, unsecured considered good, unsecured considered doubtful, and then we have the provision for doubtful debts. That still continues. In addition to that, this disclosure requirement is there, where you have to, for each you have to give disputed, undisputed. So if you, as an auditor, again, similar thing that we will have to check these numbers, let us say, considered good, undisputed, 2 to 3 years. Then as an auditor, I should ask, कि 2-3 साल से पैसा नहीं आ रहा है, dispute भी नहीं है, then on what basis are we saying, or the client is saying that it is considered good? Whether we need to create any provision against that, whether it is to be impaired, this is the question that should come to us, because ये banker के पास भी अभी जाएगा, सबके पास जाएगा. तो वो लोग पूछे, उसके पहले हम लोग को पूछ लेना चाहिए. Let us say similar thing, disputed, considered good. Then as an auditor again, I should ask कि dispute है, So what is the documentation, what is the evidence that it is to be considered good? कि पूरा पैसा आएगा? Is there any need for any provision, or provision नहीं करना है? Should I move it to significant increase in credit risk because it is now disputed? There is an increase कि भाई पैसा आएगा या नहीं आएगा? There is a significant increase in that, then whether I should put in that bucket. So these are the things that we will have to examine when these numbers finally get plotted. What is a dispute?
Understanding. How can you say that it is disputed and considered good?
So there can be situations. I would say that when we look at our clients, the trade receivables aging schedule, there will be a very small number of large overdue where a provision is being created. So that is one. Provision create हुआ वहाँ पे कोई problem नहीं है. जहाँ पे provision create नहीं होता है, let us say 2 to 3 years outstanding होता है. There might be some dispute, like I am saying. Let us say the customer has raised an objection on the qualitative aspect and they have disputed that quantity कि भाई मेरे को 100 numbers deliver करने थे, मेरे client ने 95 deliver किए हैं, तो for that 5 उसने पूरा का पूरा invoice hold करके रखा है. So these are disputes. But then the client says कि भाई पैसा तो आ ही जाएगा and no provision has been created. So the client feels that though this is disputed, the amount is still to be considered good.
This seems to be totally contradictory. All the disputes led to reduction of the realizability of the money.
Sir, I agree, but I would just say that when we actually do the audit, अब जब plotting करेंगे ना, तब आप देखिएगा इसमें numbers आएंगे. I have seen such things.
Very difficult to appreciate, but anyway.
But sir, whether you have created for all disputes, for all old outstandings, whether in the client's case 100% provision gets created.
Or maybe a negotiation is going on and negotiation has come to an end. Probably that will also serve this category.
See, madam, there can be again different levels of dispute also. That in the first case, maybe it has come in favor of the client, right? The customer, see, because in many companies we have seen there are these arbitrations going on. It's in some cases it looks to be very simple and like you rightly said, sir, that it contradicts. But what happens that at the first level, there is a dispute where the client has got the award in its favor. Then the customer has gone for further appeal. So it is disputed as of today. But the client believes that because first level award मेरे favor में आया है, I would consider it good that it should come in my favor. I don't need to create any provision for it. And therefore I would classify as disputed considerable. So, sorry? Management representation, yes, but before that, audit documentation. So, management representation, friends, is not a substitute for the audit of the audit documentation. जैसा मैंने बोला कि सर ने जैसे बोला कि ये disputed and should be considered good. That is what I also mentioned. That itself should raise a red flag कि भाई ये disputed है, आप considered good बोल रहे हैं, क्यों बोल रहे हैं? क्या आपके पास documentation है कि ये पूरा आ जाएगा? Because the moment we say considered good or we put it into a significant increase in credit risk, then also a question should come, then why not create a provision for it? So these numbers would be interlinked, friends. It's not on a standalone basis, and that is what I mentioned, that we will have to do a diligence also of the numbers that are coming under each of the cell and whether they fit there logically as an auditor. Right? And again,
in the second line, undisputed trade disputes which have significant increase in credit risk. The disputed trade dispute considered good may be a part of that.
No. Sir, ये format, sir, ये तो notification का ही format है.
No, that's not.
So, see, that is what I said. That
we'll have to. What I am suggesting that we have to break it up. Say 100 rupees is the trade dispute, out of which the significant amount of trade risk is only for 20 rupees.
Possible. Like the example I gave, that I was supposed to deliver 100 quantities. I have delivered 100. This was the 5 में quality issue आया. So the dispute is for 5. The invoice might be held back for 100. So there I would say that I am confident 95 आएगा. So that I would say undisputed considered good. 5 जो है that would be disputed considered good maybe. Because I am still under negotiation, like ma'am said, कुछ भी हो. So you will have to, yeah. Yeah, so that is what has to be examined when the numbers, once they start getting plotted, we'll have to examine कि किसका कहाँ पे क्या है. So rest of the things, whatever we discussed in trade payables with respect to the dispute, with respect to the credit period नहीं लिखा है, so all those would apply here also. 2 columns to be added for trade receivables also, not due and unbilled revenue. यहाँ पे unbilled revenue typically आएगा where the percentage of contract POCM is being followed, percentage of completion method is being followed. वहाँ पे there are a lot of the clients there is a unbilled revenue that was there, तो वो column आपका अलग से इसमें mapping होगा. This is not there in the guidance note. This is just what I was my thought process, that we will have to tag also the numbers कि considered good. Where disputed plus undisputed in this note should match with the considered good secured plus unsecured given in the other note. So this mapping, this tagging also we will have to do. Another thing is that we will have to show on the gross basis. So if there is a provision for doubtful debt, तो provision net off करके नहीं दिखाना है, gross basis पे दिखाना है. Because if you have a provision, then everything will become zero. Then no amount that would get under the credit impaired category. So you'll have to show everything on the gross basis, and so the gross amounts you should map with the 2 notes internally also. Plus the total should match with the trade payable, trade receivables that have been shown on the face of the balance sheet. The other changes to balance sheet, where the company has not used the borrowings from bank or financial institution for the purpose for which they were taken as at the balance sheet date, then this disclosure has to be made. So it is used borrowings, they have not clarified short term or long term, it means all therefore, and it has to be seen as at the balance sheet date. So post balance sheet date also, before the signing of the financials, if they have been used for the specified purposes, that would not give the benefit कि balance sheet date पे इसको reporting नहीं करना है. वो तो करना ही है. If the management wants, they can add a paragraph that post balance sheet date it has been utilized for the specified purposes, just for clarificatory purposes. But still disclosure आएगा. So term loans normally I have not seen a great challenge because they are made the payments are being made to the vendors directly. टर्म लोन के लिए, तो वहाँ पे इट हैज बीन यूज्ड फॉर द स्पेसिफाइड पर्पस, बट बहुत जगह पे टर्म लोन का पैसा कंपनी को देते हैं एंड देन द कंपनी पेज टू द वेंडर्स. इन दैट केस वी हैव टू सी व्हाट इज द स्टेटस एज ऑफ 31st of March. एंड इन केस ऑफ शॉर्ट टर्म बोरोइंग्स, that is where the challenge would come, because the money is fungible, it's not easily recognizable कि यहाँ से आया यहाँ पे दिया. Then you might need to prepare a cash flow statement for the full year and find out that whatever are the sources of funds with respect to the short-term borrowings, whether they have been applied for business purpose. Typically that would be the purpose for which the loans would have been granted, so whether they have been used for them. So here it is not whether it has been used for long-term purposes, whether it has been used for the specified purpose जो sanction letter में लिखा है उसके लिए use किया है या नहीं किया है. That is what it is. The next is a deletion that was there at the time of demonetization, that is now no longer required, so they have removed it. The last, again very important friends, what it mentions that in the opinion of the board, whether the non-current assets, that is like plant and machinery, your intangible assets and your non-current assets, whether they would have the value, the realization, जो कैरिंग अमाउंट फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स में है उतना वो रियलाइज करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे. दैट इज व्हाट इज द बोर्ड मेकिंग एज अ डिस्क्लोजर. सो माय रिक्वेस्ट इज दैट इफ दिस नोट इज नॉट अपीयरिंग इन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स, प्लीज ऐड दैट, बिकॉज दिस इज द रिस्पांसिबिलिटी दैट द कंपनी इज टेकिंग टू द स्टेक होल्डर्स कि जो भी अदर देन द नॉन करंट एसेट्स जो भी वैल्यूज है द कंपनी वुड एबल टू रियलाइज दैट. मतलब ज़्यादा प्रोविजन करने का या ऐसा कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है, जो है उतना रियलाइज हो जाएगा. And it is good for us as an auditor that the board makes such confirmatory statements in the financial statements. So अगर नहीं दिया है तो आप ऐड कर दीजिएगा, अगर आप दे रहे हैं very good. Just see the change is that the word intangible assets has been added, which was not there earlier in this note, so that has been added. So you can just modify accordingly. The next, yes sir.
cash credit account should be considered as a long term or
Cash credit short term. It is repayable on demand, sir. Cash credit account, bank overdraft.
And also realizable value, how auditor can ascertain whether this intangible asset, what would be its realizable value?
So for intangible asset, that is excluded. So what this note says, the
Let's say plant and machinery. How an auditor can ascertain what would be its realizable value? Book value is say 100 rupees. What it is realizable value? 200 rupees or 1 rupee?
sir, what this note says, other than plant and machinery, intangible assets, non-current investments. ये तीन छोड़ के बाकी जो सब है, उसका realization जो carrying amount है उतना मिलेगा. So by this, auditor को तो बोलना नहीं, management board बोल रहा है first. Second is the like we said, because it cannot be estimated on an annual basis. Plant and machinery, intangible assets and non-current investments are excluded from this confirmatory statements. It is assets other than that.
In that case, in the balance sheet, shall auditor mention that is realizable value is this much as per the report of the management?
No, because it is other than that it is being. Plant and machinery realized होगा, वो auditor भी नहीं बोल रहा, management भी नहीं बोल रहा. वो दो में से कोई नहीं बोल रहे. They are saying excluding that. So registered value or valuation, what this requires is that जहाँ पे भी revaluation of immovable property हुआ है, तो valuer's report जो लिया है, whether that valuer is a registered valuer as per the valuation rules or not, this is a statement of facts that has to be given. And in case of division 2 and 3, immovable property के साथ साथ there is a possibility that investment property as well as intangible assets में there is a possibility of a revaluation or a fair valuation, तो उसमें भी ये similar reporting देना है. Title of immovable properties. So this is with respect to land, building and or both. The disclosure that is required कि balance sheet में PPE में हो या non-current assets held for sale में हो, investment property कहीं पे भी हो, whether the property, the title is held in the name of the company or not. Even in case of lease properties, the lease agreement has to be executed in favor of the company. Then only there is an exemption. Otherwise, lease property में भी अगर lease agreement execute नहीं हुआ है company के साथ, company के favor में, in such case also this reporting would come. So this reporting broadly says you have to give the gross value, the title deed किसके नाम पे है, वो जो है whether that person is a director or promoter or a relative or employee of a director or a promoter, कब से उसके नाम से और ट्रांसफर कंपनी के नाम पे क्यों नहीं है, वो आपको डिस्क्लोज करना है. एंड इफ देयर इज अ डिस्प्यूट यू हैव टू राइट दैट आल्सो कि भाई ये प्रॉपर्टी में ये डिस्प्यूट है जिसकी वजह से ये ट्रांसफर नहीं हो रहा है. सो दिस इज विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टीज टाइटल डीड. लोन्स और एडवांसेस, again this is applicable to all the three divisions with respect to the promoter, director, key management personnel and related parties. So loans अगर इनको दिए हैं तो डिस्क्लोज करना है plus the percentage to the total loans. Second, if the company has given advances also, which are in the nature of loans. बहुत बार क्या होता है related party transaction में, you have this company where it has a related party, let us say an LLP or a partnership firm जिसके पास से material purchase करते हैं या material services job work के लिए देते हैं and then there is a contract with them. Let us say hypothetically कि पूरे साल का 20 करोड़ का माल परचेज करना है. That is what is the agreement of the understanding. In the month of April, May, June itself, almost 10 to 12 crores has been given as an advance against those purchases. So as an auditor, we will have to exercise judgment that whether this is actually a loan or advance. That can be in two times, मतलब दो aspects से हो सकते हैं. One is the amount. जैसे बोला 10 से 12 करोड़ दे दिए as a percentage of 20 crores, that is quite significant. So that also, or in terms of the timing. कि मेरे को जैन फेब मार्च में जो मटेरियल या सर्विस मिलने वाली है उसका अभी से पैसा कंपनी ने दे दिया है. सो वेदर दैट इट इज इन द नेचर ऑफ लोन, सच एडवांसेस, इफ यस देन दैट आल्सो वुड बी रिक्वायर्ड टू बी रिपोर्टेड अंडर दिस. The relationship that has to be seen is on the date of the transaction. जिस दिन पैसा दिया है, so let us say किसी डायरेक्टर को पैसा दिया है, लोन दिया है, subsequent as a balance sheet that person is no longer a director, but that amount is still outstanding. But because on the date of transaction, that person was a director, the reporting would still come in this. Right? CWIP aging, यहाँ पे कितने का है? CWIP related clients capital work in progress, anybody? Yeah. So ये aging schedule आएगा, जो भी closing balance है, as at the balance sheet date, outstanding in the CWIP, कितना पुराना है उसको देना. You don't have to give project wise details under this. You have to give whether the project is in progress or temporarily suspended. Again, this has to be seen as at the balance sheet date. तो balance sheet date में suspended है तो उसको वैसे ही categorize करना है. Post balance sheet it might have become in progress, but if balance sheet date में suspended है तो we have to dispose it as suspended. So these buckets have been prescribed जहाँ पे, so this total has to match with the total of your CWIP in the balance sheet, in the financial statements. The next is with respect to the completion schedule. These are those projects which are either there is a time overrun or a cost overrun. Outstanding asset balance sheet date जिसमें time overrun है या फिर cost overrun है, तो ये कब complete होंगे उसका disclosure करना है management को. So this again we will have to see, examine whether from the board minutes, from the project minutes, that what was the original date of the completion of the project as a balance sheet date, whether there is a time overrun या तो cost overrun है तो उसको अलग से दिखाना है. We have to give this as a disclosure. Sorry?
Some kind of management.
Yeah, this is some kinds of a management futuristic review. But one thing I would say that if there are large time overruns and cost overruns as an auditor, we need to test for impairment. I have seen in my experience there are some projects जो 5-6 साल तक डिले होते हैं, and then उसकी जो utility है, because either the raw material price would have gone up, वो product खत्म हो गया होगा market में या जो भी है, then even in such cases if that is ऐसा कोई situation है, we will have to test for impairment also the time overrun and cost overrun projects. Similar reporting is required for the intangible assets under development also with respect to aging and with respect to time and cost overruns. Benami property. We don't have to search for any benami properties. हाँ बताएगा भी नहीं, इसलिए अच्छा है गवर्नमेंट ने जो दिया है that if proceedings are pending or initiated under the Benami Properties Act, then only this disclosure is required to be given. So these are the disclosures that are there. I will not spend much time because I don't think it would be of general applicability. I will share this presentation which you can refer to in case आपके कोई client में Benami property है. This is an important one. Borrowings on security of current assets. So this would typically be the cash credits, the overdrafts, where the borrowings are secured by the trade receivables, inventories, which are current assets. So what is the reporting required? That whatever are the quarterly returns or statements that have been filed by the company to the bankers, to the lenders, whether that matches with the books of account or not. So I'll come back.
I'm saying that reconciliation with the bank statement, the details should be given to bank, suppose 100 and each per books 100 quarterly. That should be given or just a line that reconciliation of the stock statement given to bank each per books of account. That's
so
quantitative detail is to be.
Sir, reconciliation will be required to be given where there is a mismatch between the statement filed with the bank and the books of account. Only in that case the reconciliation is required to be given. If both of them match, then there is a simple thing that it matches with the books of account.
That line will be okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know इसमें बहुत सारे questions आएंगे एक करके. एक मिनट सर. Yeah.
In many cases you don't have the exact copy of the
We have to tell the company, because this is a statement which first the company has to make.
Right.
So we have to tell the company that if they are making a statement that it matches, we have an auditor, we have to say that please give us a proof of what has been submitted to the bank. If they are not able to give us the proof, then we are not able to verify it, and therefore we cannot agree on that. We might have to go and qualify.
Now, here I just have one small point. Now, the point is, you ask the management for what they have submitted to the bank, and in many cases it may be a forwarding letter being stamped without the actual enclosure which contains the details of the stock or details of the aging of the debtors which is being stamped. Now, in such a situation, the management may just give you the figures what is appearing in the books of accounts. So you really don't know what has been submitted to the bank.
So in that case, if there is just the covering letter, then we should ask the client that you please get a copy of whatever you have submitted to the bank, because this is a reporting requirement that is there. So that is one thing. There are issues, I know. Second thing, what the guidance would say, we do not have to audit that return or statement file. That is one thing very important. We do not audit the books of account also on the basis of which the return or statement has been filed. Why I am saying, अभी हमारा ऑफिस में इशू आया था इसलिए मैं बोल रहा हूँ. The client has booked all the sales and everything. 31st March they gave it to the bank, the trade receivables. When we did the audit, as per the cut-off procedures, we had to request the client to reverse some of the sales and show as finished goods in transit. तो वो trade receivables भी reverse हो गया तो balance कम हो गया. So the question was that what do we do now? Because they had already submitted a statement to the bank, which will now not match with the current post-audited books of account. And therefore, if you refer to the guidance note, it says we do not have to audit the books of account. So what our responsibility would be, how I look at it, there will be number of different situations. I appreciate, I agree. One thing is that before any rectification entries or things are passed, we should actually take a quarterly trial balance, based on which we are able to verify, as far as the receivables is concerned, what has been filed with the bank, whether it matches or not. Second thing, for inventories, because I know many of the financial accounting systems, जो tally वगैरह होते हैं, inventory is not integrated with the financials. उसका separate books रहता है या separate registers रहते हैं या जो भी रहते हैं. We will have to base our opinion maybe at least on the quantitative numbers कि भाई उसने जो बैंक में quantities दी है, whether that has been they are matching with the manual records or not, because that is what will be your stock register. In one such presentation, एक member ने बोला सर वो तो books inventory records ही maintain नहीं करते. In that case, I asked that on what basis as an auditor you are certifying the closing stock valuation. Have you been qualifying that?
Yeah, we know a tax audit report. Even we have found cases and we do report a tax audit report. The client having numerous items does not maintain the stock register. There is qualification.
Correct. So see, if you have qualified, then even in this, you will have to mention that in the absence of the stock audit reports, we are unable to verify whether it matches with the books of account or not. Right? So these are some of the situations. In case you have any questions, I will be more than, because I know this is a contentious one. One more thing, quarterly देखना है, तो अगर monthly भी वो file करते हैं, बाकी ignore कर देने का, June, September, December, March ये चार ही verify करते हैं.
But from the point of view of annual audit, all it will boil down to is the quarter four, last quarter. Actually, asset position, the basic simple and stock position, as at the end of the year, and the quarter, last quarter. Those are the points to know and activity.
Yeah, I appreciate. See, many times what happens that some of the listed companies which are under quarterly review and all, for them also those numbers are audited, or I would say reviewed and verified. So there those information is available. Quarterly I am saying. I understand what you are saying. Year end वाले verify हो सकेंगे. किसी को भी बाद में करना है तो उतना ही वो होंगे, because other 3 quarters numbers are not in public domain, right? So that is what you were trying to mention. I agree, but at any given point in time, ultimately as an auditor, whenever we are confirming, we will have to have a proper backup of all these things. So quarterly भी अगर unaudited है, उसका trial balance का print लेके we will have to keep on record vis-a-vis the statement. Again, there was a question, statement revise किया तो क्या करेंगे बैंक में? So my view is we'll have to consider the revised statement only, because अगर income tax return कोई भी return revise करते हैं तो we take cognizance of the revised one only. But important here would be we should insist, पीछे का तो पता नहीं, but at least going forward that we have the acknowledged copy of that return or statement that is filed where the numbers and everything come. हाँ, एक और केस में ऐसा आया था that where the member asked कि वो डिटेल्स नहीं देते, एक ही लंप सम फिगर दे देते बैंक में. I appreciate it, but वो लंप सम फिगर का बैकअप उनके पास तो कुछ होगा. So that we will have to consider, take a management certification on that. You verify that with the books of account and then you certify whether it matches or not.
In case of retail trade, it's more like a retail trade, like textiles. Retail trade of textiles. They are not able to maintain inventory.
Taking physical inventory in the first 3 quarters, they are not taking physical inventory. So, see, then you have to explain, mention the statement of facts. So again, my question would come that if at the quarter end, then on what basis they are giving the quantitative as well as the amount, that backup has to be checked. So that is, then you have to mention that it is on an estimated basis and therefore you cannot verify with the books of account. Caro also, yes, definitely, because there is a clause under Caro, but Caro at least, I believe in many companies, because of the change in definition of small companies, Caro would be out. Second, in Caro, fortunately, for this clause itself, there is a threshold of 5 crores that has been given of the sanction amount. But if it is required to be reported, it has to be required to be reported. Sorry? Schedule 3, yes. Schedule 3 reporting तो आएगा ही. In addition to that, Caro में भी reporting आएगा. क्या एक सर माइक लीजिए ना सर.
Note by way of note below stocks and dangers.
We have 10 minutes. Yeah. हाँ देना पड़ेगा. Schedule 3 में तो देना पड़ेगा.
Schedule 3 में देना पड़ेगा कि ये स्टॉक है, बैंक में ये सबमिट किया, उसका वैल्यू.
Schedule 3 में if there is a mismatch, then otherwise there are no numbers in this. Comparatives you have to give for the numbers.
फिर उसको क्वालिफाई करेंगे रिपोर्ट में.
हाँ क्वालिफाई नहीं होता तो करना पड़ेगा.
का इम्पैक्ट भी देंगे फाइनेंशियल प्रॉफिट.
See, impact आएगा कि नहीं आएगा, because your financials are correct. Your financials will be correct. Your financials will be correct. So true and fair view impact नहीं होगा, in my view. जो impact होगा वो बैंक को होगा.
बैंक को अगर कम दिया है, फाइनेंशियल ज़्यादा दिखा रहा है जो कि करेक्ट है, तो उसमें कोई इम्पैक्ट नहीं आएगा. उसको तो आएगा ही नहीं कुछ.
किसको?
फाइनेंशियल
नहीं, बैलेंसेस जो है, अगर आपने समझे बैंक को दिया मेरे पास 1 करोड़ का स्टॉक है, वैल्यूएशन 70 lakhs का है, राइट? So 70 lakhs is a true and fair. You will have to mention in the audit report. That is what I mentioned.
Audit report.
But आप कितना understatement, impact on profits, ये तो आप कुछ quantify नहीं कर पाएंगे, right? So it is more for the bankers that there is a wrong statement that has been given. वो उसका impact next year में आएगा.
Schedule 3 में देना पड़ेगा.
Sorry?
Schedule 3 में दे देंगे.
Schedule 3 में तो आपको देना ही पड़ेगा. जो factual है वो दे दीजिएगा. As an auditor, I would say do not take risk of your clients on yourself. Friends, we'll have to rush. We have just 10 minutes.
One question. Sir, one question.
हाँ.
Sir, suppose कोई अगर मतलब raw material purchase करते हैं, तो raw material का quarterly discount आता है या monthly discount आता है, quarter end होने के बाद और बैंक के statement submit होने के बाद. लेकिन SAP में अपन उसको जब classify करेंगे, तब ना अपना stock जो भी पड़ा है उसका तो valuation कम हो जाएगा. तो लोग उस केस में क्या करेंगे?
See, जो डिस्काउंट वगैरह आते हैं उसके बेसिस पे वैल्यूएशन आपका कम हो रहा है. इफ दे हैव गिवन अ हायर वैल्यूएशन, राइट, एंड दे हैव पास्ड दोस वैल्यूएशन एंट्रीज, लेट अस से आप 30th जून का दे रहे हैं, तो आप दैट क्वांटिटी डिस्काउंट दैट अमाउंट कैन बी पास्ड इन द मंथ ऑफ जुलाई. They did not pass as on 30th June. If they are passing on 30th June, they will have to recognize that and they have to do the valuation, they have to submit the valuation accordingly. Right? We'll take it after the presentation is over because I think we are running short of time. I've got that indication and I'll quickly run through the rest of the things and we'll have a quick Q&A with the permission of the team over here. So willful defaulter, I don't think यहाँ पे applicable होगा किसी को willful defaulter, so I'll rush this. अगर applicable होता है तो आप मेरे को फोन करके पूछ लीजिएगा. Right? Relationship with stock of company, again this is a grey area, a very important one. First requirement, you have to tell your clients कि सारे companies का CIM इकट्ठा करना है, database बनाना है. This is the first requirement. Without that, you will not be able to, or forget it, the client itself will not be able to report anything. And it will be very easy for the client, they will say no, there are no transactions with stock of companies, but आपके लिए तो you will need the CIM. So that is the first thing. How to verify this? There are 2-3 ways. One, there are agencies which are providing these services. जैसे actual valuation के लिए actuaries होते हैं, वैसे इसके लिए भी there are agencies or companies which are providing these services. Client का पूरा list, client को बोलेगा आप उसको भेज दो CIM का, they will give a report which are stock off, which are not stock off. And this you will need to examine from that perspective. That is one. Second is जो CIM है MCA की साइड में हर एक का देखने का कि भाई ये stock off है या नहीं है, which is a very cumbersome job. And my request friends, वो client CIM बना के अगर आपको मेल करता है तो हाथ जोड़ने बोलो आपके टीम मेंबर को वो चेक करने के लिए मत बिठाइएगा. प्लीज डोंट प्रोवाइड फ्री सर्विसेज. टेल द क्लाइंट कि ये सर्विस प्रोवाइडर है, आप उनको लिस्ट भेज दो, रिपोर्ट दे देगा, आपका भी काम हो जाएगा, मेरा भी काम हो जाएगा. We are used to these things and that is what I am saying that there are service providers which are available and stock off कोई भी कंपनी से आपने डील किया है, परचेज हो, सेल्स हो, your client has invested in that company, आपके क्लाइंट के इन्वेस्टर मतलब शेयर होल्डर्स में कोई कंपनी है, सारे में कोई भी स्टॉक ऑफ कंपनी है तो यू हैव टू रिपोर्ट ऑन दिस. सॉरी, सर्विस प्रोवाइडर का डिटेल्स दे दूंगा और मेरा नाम मत दीजिएगा वरना ऐसा आएगा कभी. So the next is with respect to the ROC charges, creation of charges or satisfaction of charges as a step जो period है तब तक फाइल नहीं किया है तो रिपोर्टिंग में आएगा. 287 number of layers, 2 layers are permitted. If it violates that, then that reporting would count. Analytical ratios 11 रेशियो देने हैं, current year, previous year दोनों. If between the two there is a variation plus or minus in excess of 25%, I'll come to this, I've seen, yeah. If there is a variation of plus minus 25%, so reasons for variation also has to be given. Ratios में annexure B to the guidance note they have given कैसे कैसे क्या करना है. Again that is not the rule, they are all indications. Company specific, industry specific, the numerator, denominator they might change and therefore it is very important that whatever you follow consistently. In case there is a change, then comparatives for the previous year also needs to be changed, otherwise जो 25% variation जो calculate करेंगे वो distort हो जाएगा. But 11 ratios देने के हैं and very complex I would say is the ROI, return on investment. If you go through the guidance note काफी complex है, so you will have to work on that. Scheme of arrangements I am skipping, it is with respect to mergers amalgamations. Anybody? नहीं, चलो. Merger amalgamation बाद में मिलते हैं. Yep. So utilization. See this main report, Rule 11E. The AASB ICI has already issued an implementation guide for this. This is Rule 11E. What it says मैं सिर्फ समझा देता हूँ. आपके क्लाइंट के पास पैसा आया है, जहाँ so there is a entity A which has given money to entity B with the instructions understanding that this has to be given to your client, right? So if it is a camouflage, a round tripping sort of a thing where money has been received, guarantee है, कुछ भी है, तो वो आपको reporting करना है. And similar the reverse way, if your client has invested somewhere through a via media route, then that also has to be mentioned. Sum and substance ये पूरा text का ये है. On the P&L side, total revenue का total income है change करने का, and there is other on the operating income side, there is one line added with respect to grants, donations, especially for the Section 8 companies, जो NGOs, charitable trusts वगैरह है उसके लिए. Undisclosed income का disclosure is required. So what this says is that with respect to those amounts which are surrendered or disclosed by your client, only in such cases this is required. Right? So कार विवाद समाधान स्कीम में अगर किया है तो वो नहीं आएगा in my view. Again, in addition to that, adjustments, additions made at the time of assessments, those would not come because they are not voluntarily surrendered or disclosed by those your clients. Only those would come. अगर search या survey हुआ है, they have made some statement, they have disclosed, subsequently they have retracted that your client, then also they would not come because they are not the final disclosures that have been done. CSR, these are some reporting which you can go through and apply. Cryptocurrency, virtual currency, these are the disclosures that are required. So ऐसा हम लोग बोलते हैं यूनियन बजट में आया, एक्चुअली शेड्यूल 3 में एक साल पहले से आ गया था, हमने पढ़ा नहीं था शेड्यूल 3, इसलिए हमको लगता है बजट में पहली बार आया. But these disclosures were already there as far as the schedule 3 is concerned. So that is with respect to schedule 3. Caro, I'll take just 5 minutes. Caro, like I said, the majority of the changes are common. I'll just touch upon those where there are new things which are there. Caro guidance note is also there, which I would request everybody to please download. The guidance note is on the revision also, but वो 2 महीने बाद आएगी. अभी आपके लिए start करने के लिए you already have one guidance note. Please start on it. We used to show the tangible assets, FAR, fixed assets register. Similar details now have to be maintained for the intangible assets also, and as an auditor we need to report whether proper records of intangible assets have been maintained or not. This is with respect to the title deeds. We've discussed the valuation, the benami, material, inventories. This is a change where we had, where there is a material discrepancy observed during physical verification, whether they have been properly dealt with in the books of account or not. Now that material word, हटा के 10% दे दिए. So 10% variance for each class of inventory, where you have the RM, PM, WIP, stock in process, stores and spares, they are each class of inventory plus minus 10% variance है. तो आपको रिपोर्ट करना है whether they have been properly dealt with in the books or not. Security file reports, we discussed about that inventory statement and the receivable statement. With respect to the loans given, there are a lot of additional disclosures which are there, and most important, अभी तक हम लोग लोन देते थे with respect to those parties which were maintained under the register of the 189, मतलब related party का ही loan guarantees देते थे. Now this is required throughout. That word has been, those words have been deleted. किसी को भी लोन दिया है, गारंटी दी है, कुछ भी किया, इन्वेस्टमेंट किया है, these disclosures have to be given. So you have to break up between subsidiaries, JV associates को कितना दिया है, बाकी को कितना दिया है, whether they are prejudicial or not. All those things. These two aspects I'll just cover very quickly. The first one is with respect to evergreening of loan. किसी को लोन दिया है, let us say financial year 21-22 में ये due हो रहा है, पैसा वापस आने वाला है, but that person is not able to pay, that entity is not able to pay. So what your client does, it either renews that loan, it extends the due date, or it gives fresh loan और पुराना लोन वापस ले लेते हैं. ऐसा कुछ भी है तो यहाँ पे रिपोर्टिंग आएगा, which we typically management jargon it is known as evergreening of loan. The next one is with respect to the repayment and all. So related party को जो भी दिया है उसके details यहाँ पे we have to disclose. Payment of statutory dues, GST has been added. Some cosmetic change. Unrecorded incomes we have already discussed. Repayment and usage of borrowings. तो यहाँ पे पहले था for financial institution, bank, government, debentures holder. There was a restricted category, now that has been removed. So it is now for all loans, borrowings, everything, these disclosures have to be made. Willful defaulter we discussed, loan diverted, so here term loans wala aata hai, where it has not been used for the specified purpose as at the balance sheet date, then it has to be disclosed. Whether short-term funds have been used for long-term purposes. This was there in Caro 2003, those who remember, फिर 15-16 में हटा दिया था, now this has been brought back in Caro 2020. The last two, one, जहाँ पे subsidiaries, joint venture associates का कोई obligation है, उसके लिए holding company ने पैसा दिया है, to clear that off, then that has to be reported. And the last one is कि जहाँ पे joint venture associate subsidiary के shares pledge करके ये कंपनी ने लोन लिया है, तो उसका डिस्क्लोजर है. Many times there are companies, private companies which have subsidiaries which are listed companies. तो उनके शेयर्स अगर प्लेज करके इन्होंने लोन लिया है तो all those disclosures will be required under CARO. These are not Schedule 3 disclosures, but these are CARO. Reporting of money raised, so IPO, FPO, debentures, all that is there. Fraud, a major change, पहले fraud का disclosure था by its officers or employees. So that was a restricted category कि company पे officer या employee ने fraud किया है तो वही हमको दिखाना था. Those words have been removed. So now any fraud on the company by anyone has to be disclosed under CARO. In addition to that, whether as the auditor you have filed ADT4 as required under 143(12) or not, and second, whistleblower related complaints आपने cognizance लिया है या नहीं. Managerial remuneration clause था, हटा दिया है. Needy company I skip. Internal audit, whether it is commensurate with the size and nature of the business, पहले था 2003 में हटा दिया था. Now it has been brought back. And in addition to that, now the auditor has to mention whether the reports of the auditor, internal auditors as statutory auditor, you have considered them or not. This is an additional reporting requirement introduced under the internal audit category. This is for NBFCs and the CIC core investment company. I'll skip that. Cash losses, whether the company has incurred cash losses in the financial year and the immediately preceding financial year. अगर याद होगा ये भी पहले था, हटा दिया था. Now it has been restored, it has been reinstated. So you have to do the cash flow statement and you have to ensure that you prepare a correct cash flow statement to come to this conclusion that cash losses reported or not. Reporting on auditors' resignation. This is a new clause. So this would be typical when there is a resignation that has happened and you are now signing as the new auditor. Then whatever were the adverse remarks or comments or observations of the outgoing auditors, whether as the signing auditors, you have taken them into cognizance or not. This is what is now required to be reported. Financial position. So now we have to become astrologers in addition to auditors. So based on the ratios, the expectations of the receivables, payables, the due dates, the management plan, whether in the next 12 months as an auditor you will have to now say the company will be able to meet its liability. So whatever is due in the next 12 months, whether that company will be able to meet its liabilities or not. मैं बोलता हूँ कैसे करेंगे. So these are CSR reporting requirements. Additionally, you can just go through it and report it. And the last clause on the CFS is, so CFS के लिए अलग कारो नहीं बनाना है पूरा का पूरा. CFS में ग्रुप एंटिटीज के कोई भी कारों पे कहीं पे एडवर्स रिमार्क या क्वालिफिकेशन है तो उतना ही आपको CFS में रिप्रोड्यूस करना है. You don't have to have a 20-point CFS कारो रिपोर्ट, that is not required. सिर्फ ये एक ही क्लॉज आपको रिपोर्टिंग करना है. Finally, friends, this is an initiative that I have taken since a year where I make small snippets and I share it across. The only problem in this is that I do a WhatsApp broadcast. I should have saved your number, you should have saved my number. So in case you are interested, you can just drop a hi on WhatsApp to this, by which I can add you to the database, and whenever I am sharing anything, you can get it. So the number is 8511831981. I will share this presentation with the study circle also, so that you can take care of that. Thank you friends for a very patient listening. Just two more things. My apologies, I forgot to congratulate the study circle on completing 75 years. That is why I am here today, but I forgot. So once again, congratulations and looking forward for a century. And second thing is the new syllabus that was discussed. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the ICI, we have received an in-principle approval last week. 30 days it is going to remain open for public comments. There are changes in the number of papers at the intermediate final level, the extent of articleship, the requirements for having a COP. I will not go into details because of paucity of time. I would request you for that, if required, I will come once again to interact with you. But I would request all of you to please give your suggestions on the feedback form. Whether you agree, you disagree with certain provisions, because like it was discussed, we have to shape the future of our profession, and this is the step for that. Once again, thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, sir, for such a illustrative and your elaborate deliberations on this Schedule 3 and Caro, and definitely paucity of time is an issue. But with the deliberations, the cue that I am taking just in a very short span of time, that Sir has mentioned that we need to be astrologers now, and that is really something. There are plenty of grey areas in this Caro and Schedule 3, not exactly, but in Caro definitely what I find, it is my personal opinion, that at times, because this auditing process is more a post-mortem thing, and the one that needs to be done here is a futuristic process. We need to comment on the future prospect of the organization's health, financial health. So this is something I really think that more guidance and more directions from the institute level as well as from the ministry level, and also the cases that will be coming up in future will finally guide us. So we really thankful to your fantastic deliberations, sir. And with this note, let me take the opportunity to conclude this second technical session. And before that, I would like to invite CA Indranil Banerjee to offer the vote of thanks for this session.
Before I propose my vote of thanks, I will be simply cutting out a small segment from Mr. Dassi's lecture. Always be very careful and very cautious about the discrepancy between the book stock and the stock list submitted to the bank. Because very recently, one more judgment has come, that is Suraj Bhan Iron Mill from MP High Court, that only when you can be safe, only when there is a value difference and not the quantitative difference. If there is a quantitative difference, then nobody is going to help you. And section 69 vis-a-vis section 150 BBE will be applicable, and that will make the life of the assessee miserable. Now I am offering vote of thanks. Respected Chairman of the Senior Subcommittee, Mr. Srikumar Banerjee, not here incidentally. President of the Accounting Library, Mr. Manish Tiwari, Honorable Past Presidents, other committee members, and office bearers, and respected speakers, Mr. Chatterjee, Mr. Darshi, delegates and friends. As the speakers left us in a totally engrossed state, I forgot that I need to offer the vote of thanks on the conclusion of the dissemination of the wisdom. Every nice and pleasant things has a short duration and has a lifetime. So it must come to an end, it has come to an end. And I propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the Accounting Library. I offer a hearty and exuberant vote of thanks to both the speakers, Mr. Chatterjee, who while deliberating on the various and multiple avenues which are yet to be unexplored and which are yet to be explored, which are yet to be tapped and yet to be penetrated. And really it is a thought-provoking and awakens us to look for such unconventional areas, for many unconventional areas, and at the same time he has emphasized that knowledge is indispensable and it is integral part of our professional life. And here I can't resist myself from quoting Swami Vivekananda's excellent phrases, knowledge is power. You have infinite power, and only knowledge can awaken you with infinite power. You have it inside. It is a manifestation. Mr. Darshi has probably addressed various fine prints and nitty-gritties of Caro and Schedule 3 of the Companies Act, and no doubt the same has been found very enlightening so as to prompt us to contemplate on and so as to gain more insight. Lastly, I express my thankfulness to the delegates who have listened to all the deliberations with rapt attention, now I would request all the guests and delegates to partake in the high tea, and so that happy ending comes. See all of you in our next year's seminar, annual conference.